That's right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And welcome to the first podcast of 2023, where we take a look back on all of our favorite movies of 2022. That's right. It's our official movie ranking podcast for the year. Dragon, how did this year treat you for movies?
Could have been better.
Really?
I don't know. I said nothing. This was not a good year for documentaries, I feel.
It's not. I will agree with you there. I don't think I think the volcano was like the closest one to being a standout for me, but it's not like a top 20 worthy movie by any means.
Though honestly,
Top 10 wars. Go ahead.
2022 overall stunk. But I mean, the movie that may was being a little harsh on the movies because the year overall was terrible.
I think 2022 was one of those years weirdly where I feel like more like global shit went down in 2020 as a obviously the pandemic and everything. 2022 really feels like the year that just socially everything went to shit. I don't know if and I'm sure there's personal things on both of our ends, but yeah. Anyways, so even if it's a disappointment, Dragon, we're still here to celebrate the movies because we love movies, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we got Koski Productions in the comments, and we also have Keeper Colby, aka Peregron. Colby says 2022 was a great year, and so my thoughts are a little bit mixed.
Well, again, Colby, I was a little hesitant. I may have referred to the year overall. I mean, the movies were fine, overall.
I still don't think we've gotten a year in the 2020s that's managed to stick out like a lot of the years beforehand. I think the 2010s was a damn good decade overall. There were a couple I didn't think 2011 was a particularly strong year, but overall it was 2019, as you know, is one of the banner years for me. But I will say this, I am very happy with my top 10. There's no situation like there were the last couple years where it's I've put movies in my top 10 that I respect more than I actively like and enjoy. So I can confidently say that there's a couple of those types of respect more than enjoy movies in my top 20 for sure. But my top 10 are all movies I can see myself going back to and being passionate about. I think my top 5 is particularly strong. So I think the year had some ups and downs as far as film goes, but I think there were ultimately more highs than lows. I do want to shout out, Dragon, before we begin. I want to shout out 3 movies that I did not get a chance to see. One of them is actually on your list, coincidentally enough. It's The Whale. Dragon, I've had a heck of a time trying to see The Whale this month. It's been pissing me off. Now I know how it feels in your shoes because usually I'm the one who gets everything. For me, in December, it literally feels like all the theaters in my area were basically just okay, we're going to screen Avatar and then Spirited and Violent Night for Christmas. And then that's fucking literally it for the most part. But yeah, so it was not great. Anyways, I also After Sun is a movie that has been getting so much buzz, Dragon. You probably haven't heard of it because you're not really in the same film circles that I am. But all I really know about it is that it's framed as a woman looking back on home video on vacation, home movie footage of a vacation her and her father took when she was a kid, and kind of the sort of realizing the tragedy that went into that because her father killed himself quickly after that trip. So interested in After Sun, been hearing a lot of great things about it. And then also Women Talking, which I just love. It sounds like a boring movie, but I actually love the premise of it, which is essentially all these women are gathered in a barn, and I don't know the exact what the exact circumstances are, but they're in some sort of cult. And basically the premise of the movie is that they spend the entire time in the barn talking amongst themselves on whether or not they should go through with some sort of cult thing. So that sounds very fascinating. I want to get to all 3 of those. Okay, I'm going to read off some comments. 2019 was definitely better, but overall, I really enjoyed 2022. The highs were super were super high. The lows were super low. Oh yeah, Koski, Aaron Ari Aster. That was actually like probably at the top of my 2021 or 2022 most anticipated is his new movie, and it just did not come out this year. But I am that is definitely that new movie with him. He's working on it with Joaquin Phoenix. I forget the exact title of it, but it is probably going to be the most anticipated movie for me until it comes out. Koski, man, it was not a pretty good year for horror. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. It was a fucking wonderful year for horror. And Dragon, I feel like that's probably where the big disconnect between you and me comes from, is that obviously you're not a horror guy and I am. And Dragon, us horror fans, man, we were eating well in 2022. We were eating well. So that's all I have to say. Okay, Dragon, honorable mentions. What we'll do is we'll just kind of go, three apiece. I don't want to trade off on them. I just kind of want to just you go through all three of them, and then I'll go through all three of mine. All right?
Well, first off, there's just one thing we should probably get straight before we do any of this.
Sure.
So we are labeling this as favorite films of 2022, right?
Technically, yes. My metric is actually I've changed my metric just a little bit, but you can basically do however you want, Dragon. Like with these rankings, I'm not trying to like police how you rank them, but for me, for this year in particular, I have decided to take a ranking where it's like basically like a Venn diagram of my favorite versus what I really think is going to have the most cultural impact, and then right in the middle is like the Venn diagram of like my personal favorites and the cultural impact. Those are like the big ones for me this year. Those are my top five, basically. The ones that are like that I really think are going to make the impact, and that I think are I don't know. That's not even fucking true, because Babylon's in my top five. Spoiler alert, and people hate that movie. So I don't know. Dragon, yeah, favorite. Let's call it favorite.
I'm just saying it's literally what we have on the end. So I figured
right.
we go with favorite. Go figure.
Sure.
So I'm sorry. Do we want to go back and forth on the three honorable mentions? Just list all three of them.
No, just list all three of them. You can go.
Okay. First. All right. Okay. My honorable mentions, not to belabor them too much. Honorable mention number 3, Thor: Love and Thunder.
Oh God. Okay.
So so tonally very conflicted on Love and Thunder, but here's the thing. When I go back to Love and Thunder, is that I love what we did with Gore the God Butcher. And I really like what Titi was going for with with like the heart that's in this movie, and like we have some really good emotional stuff with the Jane Foster story, and ultimately the ending of the movie. It's just getting there it's kind of a slog getting there, not in terms of it's dragged out, but just it's a slog in terms of like we're jumping all over the place in terms of tone. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch, but it's like I can appreciate what really works about this movie, even if the director nowadays is really starting to get on my nerves.
Oh God, yeah.
Because with Titi and all the stuff with Titi these days, just kind of
he's also got that soccer movie that's like supposed to have been coming out for like 3 years or so.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways.
Okay, so I want to mention number 2, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. It still probably wouldn't have made my honorable mentions, but it was good, though. It was good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great and fun premise. It fits it fits Nicolas Cage like a glove, but honestly, the only real drawback on this is that it overcomplicates the plot a bit, where it doesn't need to be as involved as it is. Where it's like,
if the whole movie was just Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal just nerding out about movies and just having meta fun with Nick Cage playing himself, I would have just eaten it up.
Exactly. Okay, lastly,
that movie's also responsible for me watching Caligari for the first time, which is one of my most memorable movie experiences of 2022.
Oh, there you go. All right, and lastly, The Sea Beast.
Yeah, another one that I considered having this in my honorable mentions.
I flip-flopped on putting The Sea Beast on there a lot, but I mean, ultimately, here's the thing. It's a quality Netflix animated film by Chris Williams, so for the kids out there who haven't seen it. it's very underrated, and I think it's fallen by the wayside. I think we should try and change that. I think folks should seek it out. It's really good. Carl
That being
Urban's in the
said, at a
movie.
certain point, it really does just turn into a How to Train Your Dragon clone about halfway through.
Yeah, that's why
Like
it's
once they hit the island, it's like I was totally Drake. I was so on board with that movie before they hit the island. I really was.
so that's the thing. Ultimately, it's like I'm ultimately I can recommend it, and that's probably the thing kind of chained it back from getting on the big 20. You know, it's
Uh-huh.
like it's great, and then it gets kind of like it gets a little by the numbers. Not the worst thing in the world by any stretch, but it's like it kind of stops it from being like the 20 favorite movies.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I want to also address the big elephant in the room for like literally all of the film culture out there on YouTube and beyond. Everything Everywhere All at Once is not on my list, and it's not on my honorable mentions. I like the movie. I like it. I very much. I think the best part of it is Kiwi Kwan and Michelle Yeoh. Like those two performances are wonderful. Um, and I also just really, really think the first act in particular is very strong with how much they're setting up. I just, for me personally, I think the film just kind of like it kind of crumbles under its own weight in the third act, and I know I'm in the minority opinion of that, but I just think it's just trying to do a little bit too much. And honestly, I feel like the film. This is just me being completely honest. I just it has an air of like, look how clever we're being, and look how like it's almost like it's trying too hard to be original. So yeah, I just want to address the elephant in the room that Everything Everywhere All at Once is not going to be on either of our lists. It's not that we don't enjoy the movie. It's just that I don't like for some reason. I mean, I get it. Like I get it that people are starved for original stories, and the movie is very original. So I get the hype. I don't know. I just think people calling it like one of the best movies of all time is so it's a wee bit hyperbolic for me. So um like honestly, if I had like five honorable mentions instead of three, it maybe would have worked in there. But even my honorable mentions were a bit competitive, Dragon. So, all right, honorable mention number one, Turning Red. I honestly kind of hated leaving this off my list. It was like it's one of those things where I probably could have swapped out a few things, but at the end of the day, I knew you were going to put it on your list, so that was one of the factors for because you know me, I like to showcase some of the basically Marcel the Shell with Shoes On took the place that this was going to take, and I knew that you hadn't seen that. But yeah, Turning Red, fantastic. I think it has a couple pacing and character beats that I'm not like. I think the ending in particular goes a little too hard with the, with the action and everything. But it's still a very very good original breath of fresh air for Pixar. Love the style. Bodies, bodies, bodies. Which I mean, this year, like I said, it was an embarrassment of riches for horror this year. And bodies, bodies, bodies. Again, I wanted to put it on, but at the end of the day, there was so much horror. And I'm going to try to, not bore you too much with my horror movie stuff on here. But at the end of the day, I had to make a call somewhere where it's like I don't want this to just be my top 20 favorite horror movies of the year, even though there were so many horror movies that came out. I probably could do that, or at least a solid top 10. I could definitely do a solid top 10. I had to make a cut somewhere. And finally, Dragon, I'm not going to describe either of these two movies to you because we'll be talking about them on Memoirs on Catch Up. But I decided to put them together on honorable mentions because they're both like really, really super low key indie films that are honestly a little bit ambiguous if they would even be counted as 2022 releases because it's one of those things where they've been circling the festival circuit for a year or two and then they just got put onto streaming in 2022. So but I'm going to shout out We're All Going to the World's Fair and Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. Two absolutely wonderful little indie high concept sci-fi. Well, I don't know. Well, We're All Going to the World's Fair is more horror. Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, more sci-fi. Really wonderful high concept indie movies with super low budgets, but a lot of heart and a lot of ambition. So check both those out. All right, let's get right into it. Dragon, who's going to go first?
Well, do you want to go first or should I?
Well, actually, let me. I think we should address some comments. I'm sorry. Oh, Colby, you've seen World's Fair. All right, all right. Yeah. Honestly, Paragon, it's one of those things where if the release date was less ambiguous, like if it had a wider 2022 release date and wasn't one of those things where it's like, okay, we're going to tour it around in festivals and we'll drop it on a streaming, at some point, it honestly probably would have been in my top 10. I mean, yeah, Paragon, actually, you and I would be down to do a whole podcast on that movie at some point. Okay, Koski says, random question in terms of TV shows, one I'm most anticipated is Masters of Air, the next World War II miniseries from the team that did Band of Brothers. Oh yeah, we've heard of that. We've heard of that. Colby says, I enjoyed everything everywhere, but it really wasn't as high as I thought it would be. A bit overhyped. Koski says horror is my favorite genre, so I liked that part of 2022. Indeed. All right, Greg and I will go ahead and go first. Thank you very much. So, my number 20. I assume this is going to be higher on your list, although I don't really think we've talked about it. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. And this is one of those things that this is definitely like, I want to like it more than I do. I respect the hell out of it. I mean, the craftsmanship, the ambition, the fact that it's like a total passion project of Del Toro's. Unfortunately, Drake, there's one element of this movie that I have a hard time getting past, and I don't really hear anyone else having a problem with.
I think it's just you, Tiki.
It's Pinocchio's voice.
Yeah.
I just, it annoys
it's the same kid, right?
What, doing the Spanish track and the English track?
Well, no, I meant it's the same kid voicing Pinocchio who voices Carlo. It's the same kid.
Well, yeah, I know that. I just, like, I don't know. It's the way Pinocchio's written. I almost feel like they do too good of a job of making him an annoying little shit. And I guess that is part of the story. But my God, he's abrasive. And it is a barrier of entry for me for this film. Also, on a more kind of objective level, Dragon, I'm not really crazy about how Candlewick is a big part of the movie until he literally just gets dropped out of the story. I mean, even if he would have gotten killed in the bomb, like, yeah, that would have sucked. That would have been tragic, but it would have been an end. But instead, we just see him like searching through the rubble, and that's it. I don't know. There's some weird pacing issues with this thing, but ultimately, it is super ambitious, and I do respect the hell out of it. Probably, maybe the most ambitious stop motion movie ever. So, got to give it props. Had to put it on there. I don't really personally love it, but like I said, I respect the hell out of it. All right, Colby, Pinocchio, definitely very anti-fascist for sure, but I will say Andor, I've been rewatching that with my dad. That was the anti-fascist thing we needed this year. Okay, Dreg, what's your number 20?
Strange World.
Strange World. Okay, I'm happy to hear that this was that this made your top 20. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a lot better than advertised. I'll say that much without saving something for memoirs. But yeah, it's cross generation. I like the whole cross generational clade family aspect of it. It's the sci-fi and botanical elements cool. Gyllenhaal's a loving father is great. I will say this. I mean, honestly, for sure, the reason it's kind of low on the list. Again, it made the top 20, folks. Which, by the way, just getting into this again, I'm ranking by favorite on this.
Uh-huh.
So by that logic, it's in terms of like a lot of this is going to be kind of like stick to itiveness in terms of like how much of this is like really kind of like made an impact and how much is like this way. The top 3 spots, the interchangeable section. Everything else is kind of like there's somewhat of a logic in terms of like would I go back to it? How much enjoyment I got from it?
Sure.
That's kind of where I'm at on the favoritism thing. I'm not saying objectively these are like where they should be, but again, it's just kind of how it relates to me, I guess. But anyway, okay. Yep.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So again, Strange World. It just for me, what holds it back for me is that one, This that's not a knock into the movie, it's just kind of more of an observation. I get the sense at the top of the movie, just again, I think it's literally like after our opening introduction to the Clades, when we introduce the son, I get a sense Disney's leaning into the LGBT aspect because they're scared right at the top. It just feels like, okay, we're gonna put it right at the top. We're gonna say it. And we're gonna make sure the kids know we have a gay character in this movie.
Yeah, I don't want to touch on that issue too much because I don't know.
It's not a negative. It just feels a little like, man, they're really scared about this. They're putting it way up front.
I mean, for me, I just appreciated the fact that him being gay was not like seen as any sort of like conflict within the plot or any,
Yeah.
like I liked how normalized it was. I agree that it was kind of like awkwardly like like at the very start, like like,
Yeah.
but yeah,
It's a little crammed in there, and it feels like we're going to go out of our way to address this. Like, okay, guys, all right.
right, right.
Anyway, but I mean, the problem spot for me more so is that I think we force like a villain turn that is completely pointless at a certain point in the movie, and the twist that we have is great, but it does make me question some of the logic of the main dilemma, of like how that necessarily works. The whole botanical plot line.
Oh,
Like, wait a minute, so we're destroying the thing that seemingly is not a bad thing, and I don't know. So again, these are nitpicks. That again nitpicks, but overall, it's an enjoyable movie. So again, it's more enjoyable than I expected it to be. I was expecting kind of like an assembly line thing, where I mean, again, I don't think it's reaching the high of highs that we've seen from the unexpected films at Disney. But you know what? It was for this year. It was good. It was impressive. The animation was going to like the human relationship aspect, so that was good.
okay. All right, number 19 for me is Fall. This was a nice, lean, mean little mid-budget thriller that I think Hollywood should be making more of. I just really like how standalone this is. The whole idea, essentially for anyone who doesn't know, the two main characters are up on this telephone pole platform thing that's like 1,000 feet up, and they cannot get back down because the ladder breaks,
Yeah,
and
just like
it's
that episode of Hey Arnold.
pretty much, yeah, actually, now that I think about it.
Yep.
What I like about this is that it kind of like it's one of those like use every piece of the buffalo kind of premises where there's not a ton you can do in a premise like this, but they really get the most out of it. And it's one of those where I feel like they did the whole like the main character having this like interpersonal journey. I feel like it was a lot better handled and more subtle and less in your face than something like off the top of my head for a similar type of movie, something like Gravity, where Gravity at a certain point, that movie basically just became like, do you get it? Do you get that she's grieving for her daughter? So yeah, I feel like this movie definitely handled that side of things a bit more subtly, and I appreciate it. It's a lean, mean little movie. It's pretty simple. There's not a ton of ambition behind it to lift it up much further, but I very much enjoy this having a spot in my top 20. A movie like this. Okay, 19.
Violent Night.
Aha.
Yeah, so Violent Night. I mean, honestly, it's a delightfully simple premise for a film. It's a simply just delightful. Like, we have a disenfranchised Santa Claus across with Die Hard. So we just have David Harbour basically put into a Die Hard situation as Santa Claus, and it's just kind of like questioning it all. And he's so wonderful in this movie. It's I love his dynamic with the little girl. It's very much the heart of the film, which I think is the best aspect of the film, even beyond the action. To be frank, I mean the action offsets it just right. Leguizamo, he is, he's fun, even if the plot isn't Yates. I think Leguizamo's giving putting some life into it, and again, we're just like the movie. Yeah, the movie's not really about like reinventing the wheel with Die Hard like we've tried so many times. It's just like, okay, well, Santa. We've never seen it quite with the real Santa Claus in there. We've had dead guys wearing Santa hats, but not Santa Claus.
Uh,
And yeah, I mean, it had some surprises I didn't see coming. Very much in the spirit of Nobody in terms of how the events and the action unfolds, and it's a real good time. It was a really good time this holiday season. this thing with Violent Night, just kind of going into it is like, huh, I wonder if this is just going to be kind of disposable action or if it's going to be something kind of kind of unique. And I think it aired more on the side of unique, so it was quite good.
Yeah, I appreciate how it's like a lot of times with these high concept movies, they'll sort of like, they'll advertise the high concept and then they'll try and work in like, oh, let's go for a deeper exploration of the character or something like that. And it's like, no, this movie's just, it cuts to the chase. It's exactly what it advertises, and I respect it for that.
Hmm.
All right, number 18 is like, I don't know. I think this is like the feel good movie of the year. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. Say that 3 times fast. Yeah, I mean, this movie, I think, some of it's not the most engaging movie from a pacing level. I'll give you that much. It's very slice of life. It's almost kind of like lackadaisical in its pacing. But man, it is such a sweet, lovely little movie with a lot of really cool practical effects, and the fact that they have all these like kind of like Rune Goldberg machine style contraptions for the title character to move around with. It's super clever. It's super clever. It's got its heart in the right place. It's almost, I'm not going to say it's quite on this level, but it's almost as wholesome and, just like feel good as something like the Paddington movies. It's in that kind of league. I feel like the only reason why it's not is because it is a little bit more world weary than the Paddington movies. There is, there is a pretty sad death in this movie that you do see coming. I feel like honestly part of the experience of watching this movie for me is like, oh man, I really don't want this character to die, but it seems pretty inevitable within the story that they are going to die for Marcel's growth as a character, and I do not want it to happen. But yeah, just a very, very sweet little movie. It's just really feel good. I don't have a ton to add beyond that.
Okay.
All right. Number 18.
There you go. That's what I want. Just want you to say the number so we keep it fresh in the audience's heads here, because we're kind
Okay,
of
I'm sorry. All right. Now I know.
The Fablemans.
Okay. This is going to be a little bit higher on my list.
Yeah, I mean, again, when I look at the Fablemans, again, it could have gone a few spaces, but look, it's the Fablemans. It's a good movie about Spielberg's life. Again, slightly removed, given the whole Fableman versus Spielberg with the names. It's not a biopic, folks, but it's practically a biopic. Let's be honest, practically.
Uh-huh.
I think the parents are very well cast, which is like the eeriest. Honestly, the parents and Spielberg himself just insanely well cast, because that kid who plays Spielberg looks just like Spielberg, and I think it's nuts. Um, the problem with the movie for me is I think it ends. Not bad. I'm conflicted about how the movie ends. I think it ends rather abruptly.
Same.
It's
I almost kind of wish that they didn't even get into his Hollywood stuff at all.
I don't know. I think they kind of needed to lead. I see your point, but I don't know. It feels like they probably should have like.
It just felt disconnected from the rest of the narrative.
Well, it's not so much disconnected. It feels like you're just kind of like we get there and then it ends. Like, well
right, yeah.
Also, there's
we know what happens next.
Well,
but
I
yeah,
know we know what happens next. But that's the sequel. I want the sequel to the Fablemans more than I want.
Well, the sequel to the Fablemans is Spielberg doing all, like literally sneaking into the Universal lot, and so that would be a legitimately good sequel.
Yeah. Anyway, so when you look at the Fablemans, thinking back on it, it's so odd. It's a little revisionist with how nice we are to the Spielberg's father. It feels like.
Yeah, no, for sure. Considering all the daddy issues, yeah.
It feels like Spielberg, like, okay, I don't want to feed into everyone saying I have daddy issues, so I'm gonna invert it a little bit.
I'm gonna have mommy issues this time.
Yeah, Floyd's gonna have a field day. Yeah.
Oh God.
So, but look, ultimately, this thing's beautifully shot. It's very personal, and again, well, I'm conflicted over the ending. Again, it was a good watch. It was a good year for Spielberg. I felt again, it was an ambitious thing. He went a little bold here. It's like, I'm going to do a movie essentially about myself. I've earned that. Yeah.
All right, next up for me, the first major horror movie of the year for me, of the list is X, and yeah, some say I love Pearl a lot more. Pearl is going to be very high on my list. Don't want to give away exactly where it is, but it's going to be high. But yeah, X is a wonderful kind of primer for the beast that is going to be Pearl as a film, because I feel like without X as this setup, without seeing the character of Pearl as this just absolutely decrepit old woman who has lived her entire life on this freaking farm and is just totally twisted and out of her mind, like the two movies really do play together. They play together so well that for a long time I was really considering just having both of them as one entry on this list. But ultimately X is a slasher movie, and slashers are probably my least favorite subgenre of horror. Um, so it does a lot with the formula, but at the end of the day, it is formulaic. This movie does, I mean, it really does go all out with the creep factor as far as the using the old woman and kind of like having a commentary on fading beauty as you get older and how that fucks you up emotionally and mentally. And there's a lot of memorable stuff in here. The alligator, but yeah, I just think ultimately it's kind of primer for Pearl. It's sort of like the foundation that you need to lay down for Pearl to be as effective as that movie is. All right. But still, I think that Ty West having that 1-2 punch of Pearl and X in the same year is just a fucking achievement. Okay. Dragon, number 17.
Weird. The Al Yankovic
Weird.
story.
Okay, you know what's funny is that the Fablemans and Weird are like, I have the Fablemans followed by Weird in my order too. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of odd given their like Fablemans is a quasi bio.
I know, right? And Weird
Weird
is like a parody biopic.
Yes, that's the thing. So this is truly a unique biopic in the sense of it's a parody of a biopic. It has shades of Spinal Tap to it. One could say. Yeah, it's mocking the biopic tropes. Tiki and myself, and I think a lot of the fans of biopics out there are all too familiar with. We have the daddy issues, we have the eureka moments, and we have the rise and fall story. However, it's very opposite to
the drugs, the copious amounts of substance abuse.
Of course, very opposite to the real life we're
yes.
So one could say it's the most inauthentic biopic ever. Yet by the same token, it knows that though, and
it's the most authentic biopic ever
in its authenticity.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's leaning into basically it's leaning into the creative liberties we always the critics always rail against biopics, and kind of we're now going to have the sense of like, well, that's going to happen anyway. Why don't we just lean into it and just call it a parody, which is what people kind of know me for. And it's very funny because of that. And yeah,
I think Weird is like consistently the most funny movie of the year.
It's like pretty funny
on a laugh per minute ratio. All right. Number 16 for me, another horror, The Black Phone. I will admit this is elevated a little bit in my mind by the fact that I did the Halloween Horror Nights maze, or at least the half of the Halloween Horror Nights maze, along with oh shit, what was that? Freaky, the one with Vince Vaughn and Dragon. The Black Phone made for an excellent maze. Freaky did not. That was like probably one of the lamest parts of my entire Halloween Horror Nights experience was the freaky side of that.
What iconic thing are they going to do with
nothing?
Freaky?
Nothing.
That's what I mean. It was a very ill-advised suggestion.
And the thing with the Black Phone is that made I don't want to talk about the maze. I'm sorry. The Black Phone. Here's the thing with the Black Phone. I do think that it absolutely has some plot problems with it. If you think too hard about the mechanics of how the ghosts work, I honestly think logically the movie kind of falls apart. And I honestly wish that the movie would have had less of the ghosts over the phone element to it. That being said, Ethan Hawke's performance in this movie is a freaking sensation. And I think his character is just like an instantly iconic horror movie bad guy. What they do with his mask, Dragon, I've talked about this before, but he basically has like different pieces of his mask, like different eyes, different mouths, and there's like so many different like swaps of the mask, and it's so creative how they do it. And also, I just feel like as a time capsule of, I believe it's set in the 70s. I want to say it's a very good time capsule. Really, like I said, this it had the with the Ethan Hawke stuff. This movie was really good, and it had the potential to be in my top 10. I just think the supernatural element of the movie kind of muddies up the plot a little bit. But still, I mean, the Ethan Hawke stuff is just fucking instantly iconic. I love it so much. It's so creepy. It's very creepy. I feel like Ethan. Well, no. I was gonna say Ethan Hawke is the creepiest performance of the year, but Dragon, you know what I think is the creepiest performance of the year. We'll get there. We'll get there. Oh boy. All right. Mark Rylance is like, hold my beer, Ethan Hawke. All right. Okay, Dragon, number 17 or number 17, I believe, or 16.
Figure it out. Come on, you can do it.
It's number 16.
Attaboy. There you go. Yes, Spiderhead.
All right, I still haven't gone to this one.
Yeah, no one's talking about this one. This was good. Yeah, this adapts. So there was a short story written, and this was adapted by, at least the script for it was adapted by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, the Deadpool writers, who do really good work, especially on the writing side of things. It's the one thing that could have saved Venom, but no one thought to use it.
They couldn't say what? I'm sorry.
It's the one thing that could have saved Venom, but no one thought, hey,
yeah,
Rhett Reese and Paul
right.
Wernick wrote a Venom script that I haven't read it because unfortunately it's under lock and key, but it was probably good. Anyway,
well, we have the lobster scene, Dragon. Venom gave us at least one memorable scene.
Anyway, thankfully, again, just to show you how good Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick are. Tika, this movie is something I think you would love. Honestly, I think you'd love Spiderhead. It's a tremendous. It's basically this tremendous grounded sci-fi story. It's kind of like a psychodrama sci-fi sort of thing, where basically Chris Hemsworth is leaning into the charm. He basically weaponizes his charm, where he's kind of this bon vivant kind of rich doctor guy who basically has like a facility. He runs these clinical trials out of this. Essentially, imagine a cushy prison, like a Bernie Madoff prison.
Uh-huh.
That essentially is like a halfway house in terms of the criminals sign an agreement where they will agree to do these medical trials with the Chris Hemsworth character. In return, they don't have to go to prison. They can stay in this cushy kind of like lax prison.
Right.
And they have these devices adhered to the base of their spines. And these devices essentially, you put in like a thing, like not a battery, like kind of like a test tube sort of. Like they put in like a little thing, and it basically it administers a chemical. It administers like a chemical that essentially it's a mood altering chemical. And they're basically Hemsworth is testing these like mood altering drugs that he can probably put in the do pharmaceutical stuff with, and basically it's him him going up against Miles Teller. Miles Teller is pretty much kind of our eyes in character, and he's dealing with a very kind of jovial Chris Hemsworth guy, but there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of scariness underneath this guy because he's like he's again psychological thing of it all here. This guy's he's testing these things on prisoners for a reason. And
Kind
there's
of sounds like it has an Ex Machina vibe a little bit.
I mean, possibly, yeah. So it's again, it's a great psychodrama in which just Miles Teller dealing with this seemingly nice and trusted figure where there's something dark brewing under the surface, and there's basically a power struggle going on where, hey, I gave you everything you wanted, you should do this for me, and he's all smiles until he doesn't get his way. So. So yeah, again, this movie really got
that one line right there is probably your best selling point for it.
I'm serious,
it's all smiles until he doesn't get his way.
Seriously, this thing, I think you'd really love this. It got lost in the shuffle. I think the critics were really harsh on it. And I
honestly think this year there were a lot of like really solid high concept Netflix movies that just got fucking buried.
Yeah. But yeah, so right. Spiderhead's kind of a diamond in the rough, one could say.
Sure. Okay, number 15. This is probably the biggest surprise of the year for me because I was expecting like practically nothing from it going into it, and that is Spirited.
Tiki, the Kroll.
Oh, thank you.
We're on 15, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Black Phone, the staircase scene. Yeah. Oh God. Okay, Number 15.
All right, Spirited.
My favorite, Red Lobster. Red Lobster. What do you know what LEB's referencing with Red
Well, yeah,
Lobster?
you reference lobsters with venom, Tiki. So
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Okay.
yeah, then advertisement for Red Lobster.
Was
It's
that
all the
actually in a
same.
Red Lobster?
I mean, I've never been into a Red Lobster. So I don't know. You saw the restaurant. I mean, did it look like? Have you ever been to a Red Lobster?
Yes, I've been to a Red
Well,
Lobster.
what's a Red Lobster look like on the inside? Is it red?
Very like tacky, like faux sea cabin kind of aesthetic.
I'm going to make the assumption that we are not in a Red
All
Lobster.
right.
Anyway, so let's talk from Red Lobster to a guy wearing red. Let's talk about Spirit.
Yeah, so first of all, with Spirited, the thing that just keeps going back to my head with this movie is seriously, man, this might be one of the best cast Will Ferrell roles ever. Like, I mean, it's not iconic like Buddy the Elf, but man, he just fits the role of the Ghost of Christmas Present and like basically Dragon. As far as like, of course, I said this before with our when we recap this movie for seasonal shenanigans. My barometer for Ghost of Christmas Present is Muppet Christmas Carol, and Will Ferrell is basically like the human embodiment of that in this movie, and I love it.
Only a lot more stressed out.
Right, but still, but his earnestness really shines through, though.
Yeah.
Peregrine, that Applebee's at the merge thing, it's still happening, by the way. It's very much happening. All right. So, yeah, Spirited. I mean, I honestly don't have a much negative to say about this one. I think that it is a super solid holiday movie with excellent production values, a really good cast, some catchy songs, really standout comedy song in the middle, probably the best song in the movie. And the choreography is just amazing. Just seriously.
7 weeks.
Wait, 7 weeks to film?
Well, 7 weeks for the rehearsal choreography.
Oh, that's nuts.
Yeah.
That's honestly nuts. The choreography in that movie is just ridiculous.
I mean, Ryan Reynolds had to learn how to tap dance. He did not know how to tap dance before that movie.
Like, I honestly think Spirited has like Chicago energy as far as like just how vibrant and energetic the musical numbers are. Yeah. So I really liked it. Keeper Colby says Spirited was phenomenal. I usually don't like Will Ferrell, but he won me over with this one. Yeah, I'm glad to see Spirited getting the love. I'm glad that it was not a streaming movie that got buried.
Yeah.
All right. So Dragon, what is your number? God, hold on. I have to check again. Your number 15.
This is why the individual numbers might have helped us. Okay, so
no, you're right.
Turning Red.
Okay.
Going from Red Lobster to more red stuff.
Did you know that Pinocchio, there's a Red Lobster in the original 1940s version?
It's so funny you mentioned that, Tiki, because no, it isn't.
Wait, yeah, it is.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, you're right. It is.
I noticed it as a kid.
I know.
I was like, wait, is that where the Red Lobster restaurant chain came from? All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Anyway. Yeah, so let me say this again. So Turning Red is a movie that it's kind of interesting for me because I'm very proud of Dome Shi on her first feature. She did a great job with this. I say what I said before, where it's kind of like The Little Mermaid, where I'm not sure this is a movie for me, but it's incredible.
Well, it's not.
Well, yeah,
because you are not a teenage girl.
Last I checked, no.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So it's not the movie for me, but it's incredibly well made, much like The Little Mermaid. And again, it's kind of interesting to see Pixar kind of get that sort of movie. And again, it's kind of Pixar bridging into new territory for seeing kind of like kind of like capturing the young woman's experience, the burgeoning young woman's experience and everything. And it's like I know we're getting Inside Out too, but there is still like an up in the air thing if we're gonna get Riley coming back, which I hope we don't personally, but we'll see. regardless, in that sense, Inside, this is kind of a spiritual successor to Inside Out in terms of, like, we're kind of like, well, what's year 12 or 13 look like? In this case, year 13.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I love Act One of this movie tremendously. Act One is Pixar's nailing it. It's so weird where the acts are all over the place these days with the Pixar movies, because I think Act One of this film and Act One of another film that came out this year are tremendous. Where I think on Luca, again, Luca had that thing where each act progressively got better. Where Act One was like, yeah,
Yeah,
it was
sure,
okay, and then
sure,
it kind of
sure.
progressively got better. So it's kind of an odd flip flop in that. Regardless, Act One is great. How we meet the Lee family. I love Ming Lee. I love Jin Lee, who has a great entrance, by the way, with that food montage. We like it's food animation nirvana, Tiki.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this movie I think is bold, and like we're kind of addressing things we've never had to address before in the animated movies, and so rarely do we ever address, like, the female period, like we've never addressed that sort of thing, and we do that here, kind of very, for the first time. I agree with your
I'm
sentiments earlier.
honestly one of those people where it's like I've never got the stigma behind it, because it's like
Yeah, it's a thing.
it's
It's like,
it's just a thing that literally half of the population goes through. Like
but
it,
we
it
we never
honestly
talk about this
confuses
thing.
me why there's so much of a stigma behind
That's the thing. So it's kind of bold when it shouldn't be bold, but it kind of is.
Yeah.
It's like we said the words. It's there, and we have like the whole parables to turning red in the thing. Yeah, it's wow. It's the movie about embarrassment. It's about
Mhm.
I don't know. Anyway. So Act Three, I agree with you though. Act Three seems to be the trouble spot of this film, where we didn't need all the ants. We just needed the grandmother and the mother, and that's it. We did not need all those ants. I mean, Paul Rudd's not even around. We don't need all those ants.
Oh God, Dragon. Paul Rudd just needs to make a movie that's literally just called Aunt Man.
Yes, we need Aunt May.
Just I don't care what the premise is, like
Yeah. Anyway,
what if
so
the premise is that he's just got a really large extended family, and he's like in charge of the family vacation, and it's all aunts.
exactly. Okay. Point being, we didn't need all those ants, but more so, we really didn't need the kaiju panda and kind
You
of
know
the
what I
battle
think
at
we
the
did need more of, Dragon, in
what do
Turning
we
Red?
need?
Honestly, like maybe one of my one nitpicks with it.
What?
I mean, if you think about it, the movie takes place in 2002, right?
I believe so. Yes.
And so, right, like, don't you think that the characters would like have a certain world event on their minds that just happened that they should have referenced?
Well, they aren't they in? I'm trying to remember. They're in Toronto. They're in Canada,
I'm
though. I
totally.
believe.
Have you heard about the Mister Enter 9/11 thing, Dragon?
No.
Oh, you haven't? Oh,
No.
Mr. Enter literally made it a point to be like, Turning Red does not reference 9/11, so therefore it's bad.
Well, yeah, they're in Canada.
Well, I think that's like the least of the worries as far as why that's a weird take to have.
Yeah, it's like it's a year after, and they're in Canada.
So yeah, Turning Red doesn't have 9/11 references in it. 0 out of 10.
Okay. Anyway, we didn't need the kaiju battle at the end of Turn Red.
The
That was
kaiju that I
maybe.
think is single-handedly the weakest element of it.
But again, overall, I want to say this though. Again, a part of me wanted to put Turning Red higher, but by the same token, for me, those because I think it's a taste thing where this has the Domeishi hallmarks I was looking for. By the same token, though, I do think it just kind of turned a little bit mandated action at the end that always kind of held it back for me. So again, Turn Red's good. I would love to see more from Domeishi, but it's where it's at. But it made the list. It's in kind of in the it made the top 15. It's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, my number 14. This is a very interesting movie where I feel like we had a few of these kind of movies in 2022 where it was basically just like, hey, you think rich people are weird and stupid and you want to make fun of them? Well, we have the movie for you. So my number 14 is going to be Triangle of Sadness. And honestly, Dragon, I really like all of this movie. I think all of this movie is solid. But this is like the single case for me where a single scene elevated it into my top 20. And that scene as I hyped up for you in memoirs, is the projectile vomiting scene. I am telling you, it is like the fucking craziest, most. It is like honestly one of the biggest, um, like most elaborate comedy set pieces I have ever seen in a movie. I mean, it just goes so hard. It is genuinely impressive filmmaking with how hard it goes. And the rest of the movie is really fun social satire. But that, oh man, that projectile vomiting scene. I know it sounds gross, and it is gross, but you just gotta trust me. It is cinema. It is pure cinema. I know that's weird, but that's why I love it so much. Is that I never would have expected a scene like that to just kind of like genuinely leave me like, oh my god, this is. So yeah. Also, Woody Harrelson, like maybe one of his not best roles, but certainly most eclectic. Like, I don't know. I really just love him in this movie.
But Tiki, is he as good as he is in the movie The Man from Toronto?
That, no one is ever as good as the man from Toronto.
Yeah. You know what May May's favorite movie is from this year?
What?
The Man from Toronto.
All right, Koski, to be fair, I feel like I have heard several people unironically being like, oh man, the butt plug scene from Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's so original.
One could say it's a bullseye.
So yeah, you're not too far off with film bros are weird. Okay, oh god. So we've got some fun Aunt Man comments. Koski
Yeah.
says Paul Rudd has been preparing for Aunt Man his whole life.
He did a whole trilogy just getting ready for a movie that was removed by one letter.
And then Keeper Colby says Aunt Man definitely sounds like a direct-to-DVD comedy starring Rob Schneider.
What if Paul Rudd was the successful Rob Schneider? What if that was
That would be wonderful.
So he can make anything work.
All right. Oh god, LEB says if I ever don't like a movie, I'm just gonna make fun of it for not talking about a world event, even if the movie doesn't take place on Earth.
Yeah.
I genuinely hope that is where the 9/11 turning red thing is. I hope it becomes like a cultural thing. Honestly, the 9/11 thing kind of blows me away because on some level, Mr. Enter single-handedly made it okay to joke about 9/11 again. I mean, on some level, Mr. Enter is actually a genius for breaking that cultural taboo. It honestly is kind of mind-blowing. All right, I'm sorry.
I think
Number
Gilbert
14.
Gottfried kind of beat him to that point, but okay.
Number 14 on your end.
Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Okay.
Yeah, so Wakanda Forever, it really sums up Phase 4, and I think what they were going for the whole time. And the Phase 4 predominantly is about aftermath and transit in the transitional phase, in which it's the bumpy trail along the way, as I think many people might say about Phase 4 of the MCU. Unfortunately, it does not. The biggest flaw with the movie. It's not a flaw they could have combated in any ways. Unfortunately, it doesn't escape the shadow of the first film, so it can only be so good. It's bloated in the middle, but again, Coogler's direction is great as always. It's wonderful. I like Shuri's arc. Particularly, I love how we start with kind of our nod to the Donner Superman, which you got to remember. Black Panther, the original Black Panther, did have a lot of Donner Superman in it, which is how important it was, for what Black Panther was as a character. And it's very classy Donner Superman esque, and it's so interesting that we begin the next one with the very much kind of akin to the all these powers and I couldn't even save them scene with Shuri, which was for me was like the big grounding thing of Wakanda Forever. I like how that kind of pays off and kind of Shuri's big kind of thing in the end. Namor, he steals a lot of scenes that he's in. Namor is a welcome addition here, and the whole Mesoamerican kind of aspect applied to the character. Again, something he's never really had before, and I think it kind of fit. And again, it was kind of Coogler saying like, "Hey, the only way I'm gonna touch this character is if I can." Is if I can kind of make him super interesting in terms of if I can make Atlantis not just it's world. It's basically it's basically it's like grease but underwater. I want to make it a little more special.
I still feel like genuinely bad for Ryan Coogler for Avatar: The Way of Water kind of overshadowing all the underwater stuff in this movie. I really do.
And you
It's
got to admit though, he did do the
it's not
best he.
Coogler's fault.
I mean, Coogler did give it his best effort to really make the underwater stuff really pop differently
He
from
did, but
Avatar, right?
Dragon, you have not seen The Way of Water, bro.
Nope. Well, no, I haven't. I'm just saying. I mean, it's
Yeah,
different, but
I'm saying you have not. You don't know. You
well, I'm not
don't
saying
know.
better, but I'm saying you're saying it's different though, right?
It's oh my god, yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. So yeah, so as I'm saying, when I look at Wakanda Forever, I mean, the reason it's not higher than it is that I don't feel compelled to rewatch this like I would with the original Black Panther.
uh-huh.
Unfortunately for me, I think the thing really holds this movie back. And again, it's a story choice, and I realize that, but I think extending Act Two doesn't help this. It's the fact that unfortunately we don't get Black Panther until Act Three. There's a lot of build up there. And I understand the build up, but I don't know if that was a
It's messy.
miscalculation
It's
or
really
not.
messy. And even when we do get Black Panther, I feel like it's not as big of a moment as it should be.
Yeah. So it's Wakanda Forever is complicated, but it does get a lot right, and obviously the
It needed
whole
a lot more in Baku.
well for sure. Well, we could say about any movie though.
Any movie ever, yes.
Yeah, any movie ever. You could use some M'Baku.
E.T. needed a lot more Baku.
Wouldn't have hurt.
Can you imagine? Who is this weird potato man?
Come, we'll feed him to my children. He looks
Oh my
like
god.
oh, I'm kidding. We're vegetarians.
Oh my god. That's
He
delightful.
looks mostly plant based though, so we'll see how it goes. Anyway, but yeah. So anyway, regardless, Wakanda Forever again. It's good, just a little messy in the middle.
All right, my 13 and 12 are going to go by fast because they were the aforementioned movies that I kind of had in the same order you did. So 13, The Fablemans. I don't really have a ton to add that you didn't. I will say that I think Michelle Williams, she's kind of had a weird arc this year as far as like the audience perception to her performance goes. Because when the movie hit the festival circuit, people were raving about it. And then I feel like general audiences were like, it's a little over the top. And for me, I think it works. It is over the top, but I think it works in the context of this movie because it is like an exaggerated childhood memory. So Schindler's List even more Baku.
Now, that one actually might have been interesting if you really sure.
God. All right. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm gonna try to keep the comments in between the entries here. Jesus Christ. So yeah, Dragon, I think the Fablemans, like it really does have a very standout scene, which is the one I mentioned where Sammy is editing together the
Yep.
vacation footage and he's discovering the affair, like through the editing. And I really do love the theme of the movie explores where it's like you don't even necessarily know what you have on film until you're in the editing room and the camera captures stuff that you might not even see on set. And I honestly kind of wish the movie would have leaned more into that theme. But yeah, I don't have a ton of other notes. I think you and I are on the same page with the ending. Especially, I don't know, man, fucking David Lynch coming in. Like,
I look. I really like how we use David Lynch. Just makes me. I just don't think.
I honestly don't, to tell you the truth. I honestly think it
Well, I'm
was a
saying
little.
timing wise, I just think casting him in that role was kind of cute.
Uh,
Uh,
I don't know. Like, I think it was a little bit like it was a film bro move for me.
I
Where,
don't know if we need that scene, but I love that scene though.
all right, it's a solid scene. It's a
Yeah,
solid scene. I just, and I also feel like the movie maybe jumps around. Like, I feel like if it was more focused on any one plot line, it would probably be a little bit more of a strong hold. Does that make sense? Like, if it was more focused on the Seth Rogen affair.
yeah, we do kind of write. We kind of write Seth Rogen's character. I forget if his
And I
name's Ben.
genuinely think Seth Rogen's character is the most compelling character in the movie.
He has a great scene with that camera.
He does. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a really good scene. Plus, he's not really spelling it out, but it's there.
So, yeah, I don't think I loved The Fablemans as much as I really wanted to, but I still think it's a pretty damn solid entry in Spielberg's, like modern output. The Seth Rogen affair, indeed. All right, Dragon, what's your number 13?
The Atom Project.
Okay, yeah, I was kind of surprised this is this high for you, but I mean, fair enough. I
I
know you're
mean,
a big Ryan Reynolds fan.
that's the thing. I kept weighing where to put this, but when I put it through the prism of favoritism, it's just like honestly, I find, believe it or not, more than Wakanda Forever, I think I would go back to the Atom Project more because I think it's more digestible. It's like I found this just it's a very enjoyable Ryan Reynolds film. It's a taste of what Deadpool 3 might look like, along with Free Guy, and I don't know. It had honestly, it's so funny. This has some Fablemans in it with sardonic edge, one could say. It's a personal film. This is a very personal film for Ryan Reynolds. He's putting his self-deprecation right there on the screen, man. It's like it's literally him interacting with his younger self and taking so many pot shots at himself. It's really
Mhm.
funny. So the movie's got good action. It's got great chemistry with the kid, which I'm sure is helped by the fact that Sean Levy is directing this. Ruffalo and Ryan Reynolds scenes together really great. Them playing father and son, it's a lot of fun. To me, it's very funny. Also, especially Ryan Reynolds like threatening and yelling at children just is endlessly entertaining to me. I don't know. I just for me the problem is I just wish the villains were stronger. For me, I don't care for the villains as I think we're well cast, but I don't think we do anything with them. We just kind of make them like, hey, plot. And it's like not
They
really.
are very, very forgettable. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really the only gripe I have with the movie. Otherwise, I don't know. It's otherwise it'd be higher up for me. Frankly, man, I really enjoyed this movie, and I think it's rewatchable. Just until I get to the villain parts, it makes me want to fast forward through them.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, number
Oh,
12,
but wait,
weird. The what? Sorry.
we got a comment we should read.
Okay, the Adam Project is like E.T. Back to the Future had a baby, and that baby was dropped on its head. Oh,
Yep.
Jesus.
There you
Harsh.
go.
Harsh. And Deadpool played both E.T. and Marty McFly, but from that weird PG-13 release of Deadpool 2. That's oddly specific. How do you
Yeah,
feel
Fred
about
Savage is in bed. He's not, and
that?
oddly, he's not wearing pants.
Oh, God. Okay, yeah, my number 12, Weird, the Al Yankovic story. Like I said, I think this is easily the funniest movie of the year from a laugh per ratio movie, for a laugh per ratio sense. I will continue to praise Toby Huss's performance in this. I think Toby Huss in particular, like Radcliffe is great, but Toby Huss as the father is just like I think he does steal the show because he both has like the funniest moments in the movie, specifically the devil squeeze box, which I think is just instantly quotable. And also some of the most genuinely heartfelt performance stuff in the film. Like he is the one character that actually goes on a genuine arc.
When he
And,
unbuttons that shirt.
yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Like you said, Dragon, I feel like this movie is just it is like I'm so happy this movie exists because it is just like the perfect encapsulation of Al Yankovic and his sense of humor, his sensibilities, his style. Like it's not in my top 10 for a couple reasons. One, as we kind of went over in our review, I do think that the Pablo Escobar stuff is like it feels like a little bit of a plot cul-de-sac to a certain extent. It's like, and we're gonna do this for a minute. And then also I think the bigger thing is that this movie is not the most accessible thing in the world for people who are not in on the joke. Like if you don't know, for example, that Al is famously like straight edge and does not do drugs at all, then a lot of the jokes about the substance abuse, which I think are some of the funniest things in the movie, are going to go right over your head. So in that way, I really can, in good consciousness, put it in the top 10. But yeah, it is a wonderful film. Um, okay, Weird is the perfect Weird Al movie. I want nothing different from a Weird Al movie. Indeed, indeed. And Colby, I mean, you probably saw my avatar in WDW Magic the Dragon next project. So you want to be an Imagineer? I'm not going to tell you guys exactly what the prompt is, but in case you can figure it out for my avatar, Weird Al will have something to do with it. That much I can say. All right. Also, not the most accessible movie physically. Couldn't stream it on my. Yeah, the Roku thing. I don't know. I stream it on my Chromebook just fine, but people have been having problems with Roku. So I don't know what your issue was, Colby, but I have heard people having issues with it. Okay, Dragon, what's your number 12?
Mike Mignola, Drawing Monsters.
Okay, is this like your obligatory documentary pick for the year?
I mean, kind of.
That's
So
fair.
this
That's fair.
this one was kind of hard to. So 20, as I said before, 2022 is not a documentary year per se. And this is really interesting to rank because not barely anyone's seen it because see
Watch,
I
this is the year that the Oscars actually give the best documentary movie to a documentary that's actually pop culture focused, but it's just not a great one.
So I mean, here's the thing. I mean, I like this a lot, Tiki. It's just the issue is it's not really available for everyone to watch right now, so it's kind of weird to put it on the list when I
uh,
think probably I'm the only one of at least let me I don't know like a 1 in 60 chance of people have seen it.
wait, how do you see it?
Well, that's what I'm going to tell you. So I
Okay.
invested in this documentary, so they
Oh,
sent
right,
it
you
to
told me
me.
that. Yeah. Okay,
So
okay.
so I've seen. Eventually, it's going to come out streaming somewhere. I mean, right now, I don't think it's like
That's kind of like
streaming.
the opposite of the problem I was having with We're All Going to the World's Fair, where it's like, do I put this on the list? It was like people have seen it like 2 years ago, but not most people. So yeah, I get that dilemma.
Like you would watch the trailer for this right now. I don't know.
Uh,
Again, it's not streaming, at least not yet. So it's because it came out after I assume delays and stuff. But point being, it's yeah. So I invested essentially I invested in this Hellboy slash Mike Mignola documentary, and yeah, it's kind of like a less operatic. To a degree, it's kind of like a less operatic version of Happy Happy Joy Joy, the Ren and Stimpy story. Now, not in that it's going to be getting to like a lot of nitty gritty or like a lot of really kind of dark stuff that's around Mike Mignola or anything. In terms of like it's talking about a very specific artist with a very specific style, and really getting into weeds about it, where it really puts into perspective how unique and how you know how interesting Mike Mignola is, where his style comes from, and the fact that Hellboy it really comes in perspective that Hellboy really is Dark Horse's Batman or Superman, if you will. He is the landmark character of Dark Horse. He's the
mhm.
he's the guy. So, and the fact that that's a creator-owned character, which is so rare these days, where it's the fact usually the companies own it, and the creators usually get the shaft. Where Mike Mignola is in complete autonomy over his character. The guy started in the industry as an inker, and he ended up being a creator who actually retains his rights and very firmly is calling the shots at Dark Horse. So yeah, it's about and also it gets into his relation, kind of his friendship and his relationship with Guillermo del Toro, which then had a rift that formed, and they kind of cover that in the movie. How they were friends and then they kind of drifted apart. It's not
Interesting.
like it's not a bitter thing. It's just the fact that once Hellboy 2 happened, it was just like, well, it's a little less my vision now. Guillermo is just doing his thing, and it's different from kind of classic comics Hellboy, which is what the first movie kind of was.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean this thing is gobs of interviews, Tiki, from a lot of familiar faces, a lot of fun people. We have Del Toro in there. I think we got Ron Perlman, Doug Jones, and even believe it or not, Rebecca Sugar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Rebecca Sugar. She was her Steven Universe is in part influenced by Mike Mignola because
Really?
let me tell you this: the star.
Aesthetically?
Yeah, well, let me tell you this: the star, and the whole star motif in Steven Universe,
Yes.
Mignola.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, Mignola. Basically, she asked him like questions about like kind of like figuring out kind of aesthetically, the universe and like how she can kind of symbolize things, and he pointed her to kind of like some mythology about stars, and that basically kind of gave her the idea for the star.
Okay.
So yeah, it's so that's the thing. Again, it's there's nothing holding us back except for the fact that it's no happy happy joy joy in terms of like that was like my number one of the year it came out. Or
Uh,
and the only other thing that's holding it back, and it's so odd to place this thing because again, it was not widely released, at least not yet. So I didn't really know where to put
yeah,
this. So
no, I feel that. Yeah.
it's good. It's not the best documentary I've ever seen, but it was a well-made documentary in a year with pretty much nothing outside of like, yeah, that volcano movie's kind of cool. Outside of that, okay. So yeah,
Okay, number 11 for me, Dragon. The bad guys are gonna
the
be the good
bad
guys, so we can
guys.
keep being the bad guys. Okay, I actually had a really hard time deciding which of between this and Puss in Boots, which one should be in my top 10. And I will say, like, from an aesthetic and not necessarily character, but like I like the vibes of the bad guys more than Puss in Boots. But I do think Puss in Boots is a stronger film. I think the bad guys, I mean, we talked about it, Dragon, but it does have some pretty significant issues with its third act. I think that the plot really does kind of like fall into itself in the third act. So yeah, that's an issue with it. And I just don't think Puss in Boots has those kind of fundamental issues. But man, is this movie fun though. I mean, it's stylish as hell. I like honestly the wolf character, Sam Rockwell's character, Dragon, he honest to God might be one of my all-time favorite DreamWorks characters. Like I love his arc in this movie. I really do. I think the writing on him it came together so well. His Mark Maron is the snake. Mr. Shark, I think, has some of the biggest laugh out loud comedy moments of the year for me. Unfortunately, I think the other two bad guys are kind of trash characters, just straight up trash
I mean,
characters.
look, the tarantula is okay, but the piranha's garbage.
The piranha's garbage. The tarantula is literally just, hey, folks, Aquafina. It's Aquafina.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. So, like I said, Puss in Boots. Like, I honestly think the bad guys. Like, I don't really think I like anything in Puss in Boots better than I like the character arc of Wolf and Snake in this movie. But I just think Puss in Boots has more going for it in other places, and it doesn't have the issues that Bad Guys has. But
I was tempted.
What?
Sorry. I was tempted to add the bad guys, at least in an honorable mention, but again, it's that piranha and it's the gerbil thing.
I mean, the piranha, yeah, the gerbil's not great too, and I love
too many
Richard
gerbils.
Coyote,
There's
but
too many freaking gerbils in this movie.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't blame. Like, honestly, Dragon, the piranha was like the thing that I was like, I cannot in good consciousness rank this above Puss in Boots.
Yeah.
All right. Keeper Colby says, I just watched This Place Rules, which is a great political documentary if you're into that sort of thing. Honestly, Colby, I'm really not, just because I'm one of those people where it's like, I don't necessarily bury my head in the sand with politics, but like, I have so much bullshit anxiety triggers just in my day-to-day life that I really don't have the mental capacity for, the broader scale political stuff, if that makes sense. All right. Colby also says the animation in the Bad Guys is one of my favorite looking animations of the year. I hate Aquafina a lot, though, so I couldn't rank it too high. LEB says definitely should have watched this movie when on it. Yeah, LEB, watch it. I think you'd really like it. Yeah. Okay, Dragon, what is your number 11? What poor, sad movie just missed out on making the top 10?
Yeah, this one was kind of flip-flopping with the 10th spot. Chippendale Rescue Rangers.
You know what, though? I'm genuine. Like, that didn't even make my honorable mention, so I'm genuinely impressed. Like, I like it a lot, but I just think it does have some issues that hold it back. So I'm genuinely happy that it made it so high up your list, because I do really like it.
I mean, honestly, that's the thing, Tiki. Is that I don't think we had remotely any expectations for this movie because it seems so unnecessary. Like, hey, we're doing a Chippendales Rescue Rangers movie. I don't think anyone really asked for that.
It's really not a Chippendale Rescue Rangers movie, though.
I know that, and that's the thing. That's what saved it. And the movie knows this. Yeah. It's like what I love. This movie really impressed me in that it feels like. Honestly, this is going to be a real simplistic way to put it. It feels like Disney Plus actually cared for a moment. It feels like
that's harsh, but true.
It feels like, at the very least, it looks like Disney with like the man.
Hey, we're just going to shit out a Night at the Museum animated movie that's barely an hour long. It has like dated looking Flash-esque animation.
Yeah, that trailer looked terrible. Anyway, so here's the thing. With the Chippendales Rescue Ranger movie, it just feels like you get a sense of like they stopped for a moment. Like it almost feels like they were assigned, okay, I want Chippendales Rescue Rangers turned into a movie. And it feels like the filmmakers were like, huh, okay, well, we can't reboot it. We can't possibly reboot this. And even if we just made a movie with Chippendale Rescue Rangers, what are we going to ultimately say about this thing? What's it going to be? Is this going to be an extended episode of Chippendales Rescue Rangers that no one asked for? So let's just make it literally about the show. Let's just like, okay, so the show is an actual thing that happened that you either like and you don't like, and let's check in with the stars years later. So it made sense. Like they went the meta route, which I think is the only thing they could have taken to make this thing interesting.
Mhm.
And it worked. Again, like the world building is tremendous on this thing. That's what saves it. It's hilarious. It's meta as all get out. The whole bootlegging aspect is brilliant. We go to the uncanny valley is like the bad part of town, the unfinished part of town.
We see Randy Marsh in a Disney movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Freaking
saying.
Randy Marsh.
There is a large degree of Who Framed Roger Rabbit in terms of the amazing
Oh yeah. Oh
crossovers that you
yeah.
never thought you see, and again protected by the whole the bootlegs. It's very slightly removed, but it's them. And then you have, of course, the convention scene in which we get our famed Aunt Man gag.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Yes.
Which is, and overall, man, this movie impressed me in a lot of degrees. There was, again, seems like it could have been easily a disposable Disney Plus movie. Like, hey, we have shows, right? We're not going to put out the shows everyone wants, like Legend of Tarzan or Buzz Lightyear Starman or anything. No, but yeah, it's quite good. It was, to me, I think it was the big surprise of 2022, at least for me.
Yeah, I remember like before it came out, I was like, this could either be really fun or really awful.
Yeah, me too. I looked at that trailer and was like, man,
Yeah, I had no idea how to feel about it going in.
now we have Peter Pan as the bad guy, essentially.
I still think that was a stroke of genius, as mean spirited as it was with the Bobby Driscoll thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think they took a leap. I think it was a justifiable leap, personally. I think it was like, well, it happened. And, I don't know.
All right. Keeper Colby says Chippendale's a better whodunit than Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I won't even lie. I mean, to be fair, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is less of a whodunit than like. I feel like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies like a whodunit. Like it advertises itself as a whodunit, but then it kind of turns into a slasher. um, and then he says, "I won't bear Glass Onion though." So I take it you aren't a Last Jedi fan, Colby. I take it you have some strong feelings towards the Last Jedi.
Hey, Tiki, did you see the extended cut of Bodies, Bodies, Bodies?
No.
Do you know what it was called?
Bodies, 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 bodies.
Bodies.
What?
Yeah, bodies, 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 bodies. It's four bodies instead of the three. Never mind. Kidding. There is no extended cut. I just thought it'd be funny if you just added more bodies to it.
Right.
Anyway.
Oh, it beat Glass. Yeah, Colby. What I genuinely thought you meant is like, oh man, fuck Ryan Johnson.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my Colby. Mine too. Honestly, maybe. I don't think it's an objectively better movie than Empire by any means, but I really appreciate the swings that it's going for. So, all right, yeah. Anyways, okay, Dragon. Oh, I'm sorry. It's my turn. Top 10. Top 10, baby. Number 10. Can change the banner. I unapologetically love this movie. It was honestly probably the best theater experience I had all year. I saw it with a packed crowd of fans, and everyone was going nuts. The energy was fucking electric. This is a pure cinematic experience. It's Jackass forever. Drake, I swear to God, I'm not really even being hyperbolic with that, though, because the crowd reactions in this movie, like, I had such a fun time in the theater with this. Like, as a film, yeah, it's not like it's a Jackass movie. It's literally just people fucking mutilating themselves. It's like this is like the antithesis, Dragon. Like you would hate something like this because of all the emphasis on like the body parts and stuff like that and the physical pain of it all. But oh man, it is this movie in a crowd, seeing it with a crowd. it was so electric because not only was I genuinely think this is the best Jackass movie as far as just how creative the stunts go, how hard they go. But I also this movie also has that added element that it's like you never thought you would see this crew back together again, and they are. And the new people they take on just fit in so well. And there's this whole I don't know. I know it sounds super cheesy, but what I really love about this movie is that I feel like this movie kind of has the sort of like found family elements that Fast and the Furious is like hyping up. It's like you really get a sense of camaraderie between all these people. Like obviously all of the old guard is, they've been just friends for decades, and so they're all super close, and it's genuinely kind of heartwarming to see them kind of welcoming in the new blood and being both protective and trollish to them. I don't know. This was just so unexpected for me, and I was someone, for better or for worse. I grew up on the Jackass movies a little bit. I never actually really watched the show, to tell you the truth. It was for me, it was only the movies. And yeah, I do think this is probably genuinely the best Jackass movie yet. Just like I said, probably this is unironically the most electric in theater experience I've had since Endgame. And I'm saying this for me in theaters was more electric than No Way Home. Like that's how good the electricity in the theater was for me. So it's number 10 just almost primarily for the in theater experience, but man was that a memorable theater experience. Whew. All right, you're number 10, Dragon.
Okay, my number 10. Now, folks, we're in the top 10 right now, so we're in the big leagues, okay? So give a little credit, even if some of the ones you're expecting aren't all the way up there, not all the way up there. Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery.
Yeah, this is pretty close to my ranking as well. So
Yeah. So, yeah, it's another great Ryan Johnson movie, like a non-franchise Ryan Johnson movie. So, yeah, for me personally, not as great as the first one. Just as far as I think they're both good movies. I think if I were given a choice, I'd go with the first movie because it's got a lot of people I like, and I think it's kind of more like we're stuck in this. I mean, to be fair, in both movies we're stuck in one location for the majority of it, but I don't know. It's the point being they're both good movies. It's very, and in that respect, it's very different from the first movie. So I really respect how different it is in that it's like really going for something else again. If the first one's like a clue mystery, this is like an Agatha Christie. Like this is like not the Hercule. I'm blanking on the full guy's name, but the Hercule, the guy on the train,
uh-huh.
the Orient Express. So yeah, I mean this really shows potential for the Knives Out franchise. I don't know how long they're going to keep it going. We know we're going to keep it going for at least one more movie. We'll see where it goes from there. Daniel Craig is more central, is more center stage in this, which is a really good choice. I think this movie is refreshing. It's a good time. It's got a good ensemble. I Ed Norton, he's a whole lot of fun as kind of as we learn kind of our vapid rich guy in the movie, but we don't quite know he's that vapid. We think he's actually a smart guy. I don't know. The movie just continues to be like a clever modern update on the mystery film, and I think it's kind of a good niche that Johnson's been doing lately. He's been putting a lot of the prowess and the filmmaking techniques he's been learning about and putting them into these movies. So I mean, I had a great time with it. Just I don't know. I think I don't know. It's ultimately, I don't favor as much as the first one, so it's not going to be all the way up there for him. But it is a well made film. But again, Ryan Johnson knowing how to point the camera, water is wet.
All right, Colby says, I hope they never stop making Knives Out mysteries. I would give my soul for endless Benoit Blanc appearances.
Oh, I heard something today about Knives Out. I don't know. I think you've heard this. Yeah, the Johnson's really up. Johnson doesn't like calling it a Knives Out mystery. He just wants he would have like calling it Benoit Blanc sort of thing instead as the subtitle. But the Netflix wouldn't let him change that. He's forced to keep the Knives Out part.
You know what's funny about that is like much how Pearl, like the official subtitle to that is like Pearl, extraordinary origin story. Do you get it?
Mm.
But I'm like, no, fuck that. It's Pearl. And for me, like Glass Onion, it's not Glass Onion's a night. It's just Glass Onion to me. Like titles should be able to stand on their own more.
Yep.
All right. Woo. Okay, number 9 for me. Another horror one. There's going to be quite a few horror movies in my top 10, Dragon, so bear with me.
Get out of here. No. You horror movies? Pshaw.
It's going to be Barbarian. In Barbarian, it's another like in theater experience that was amazing. This movie just kind of came out of nowhere. Like they didn't even really advertise it until a few weeks before it released. And the general conceit of the advertising was basically like, you do not want to know anything about this movie going into it. And they were right, because yeah, it was a ride. I think this movie kind of cements Justin Long's legacy as like a horror movie icon. I really do. I think he really does fit that title. I think this movie has a lot of really stellar atmosphere. I love how it kind of builds on itself. I love the reveal of just how shitty of an area the house is in. If you know, you know. I don't want to go over that, like the mechanics of that, but it's a really cool reveal. My one caveat why this isn't higher than some of the other like top tier horror movies of the year for me, even though it is on the top 10, deserves a place on the top 10, is that I really should have made a point to rewatch it. I rewatched as much of these as I could before making this list. Like Pearl and Nope, for example, I both rewatched. But I will say I don't know how well this is going to play. It's one of those movies where it's like I'm not like, most of the fun is the twists. And it's not like The Sixth Sense where there's one twist that recontextualizes the whole movie. It's kind of like a series of twists. So I'm just not sure how that's going to play on a rewatch. But it is still super memorable, really well shot, kind of came out of nowhere, cements Justin Long as a horror icon. So yeah, it's still damn good and one of the best of the year. Whew. All right, you're number 9.
My number 9, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness.
Don't you mean Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Midness? I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Anyway. Yeah, so I mean, I find this movie fun and rewatchable, and it's and honestly, I mean, it's more. Here's the thing: when I was going over the MCU films, I mean, I kind of knew when I stacked them up against each other. I feel I would revisit this more than I would Wakanda Forever, and that's not to say Wakanda Forever isn't probably an objectively better movie, but it's just in terms of, I don't know, there's something I have issues with, especially on rewatch. I have issues with Multiverse of Madness, but there's still a lot that I really like about it. You know, for example, it's the Illuminati stuff does not hold up on a rewatch. Unfortunately, it doesn't, because it raises a lot of issues. Where, I mean, one, we have like the Maria Rambeau Captain Marvel, who's like really really snooty. It's like, really, why you gotta be all snooty, man, during this meeting? Why can't anyone give Doctor Strange a straight answer about what's going on? Why are we going about the Scarlet Witch, which gets them all killed? It's a whole, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I just. I don't know, the movie just has like a lot of fun. It's Sam Raimi's directing style applied to Doctor Strange, which is like a passion project for him. He's always loved Doctor Strange, and it's kind of odd that, well, it's kind of odd in a great way that, Sam Raimi's very much leaning to the Ditko sensibilities, because, given that he's directed Spider-Man, now he's directing Doctor Strange. It's I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's a very entertaining sequel to Doctor Strange. It doesn't necessarily beat out the simplicity of the original, and I know Doctor Strange 2 doesn't necessarily live up to the full potential. I think we all had insanely unreachable heights for Doctor Strange. We won like a whole bazillion versions of multiverse, which, I mean, it's not that we couldn't do it, but it's so weird that with the pandemic shifting things around, it's unclear how much that's been affected, given all the interconnected things to Doctor Strange 2, and now ultimately it's most likely going to lead to Secret Wars from the looks of things. But we don't know these things until years from now, so it's kind of caught in the mesh somewhere.
Mhm.
But I do think ultimately what matters to me about this Doctor Strange movie is one, it's Doctor Strange versus Scarlet Witch, which is awesome, and that reveals seeing that's the movie we're getting. This is great. Okay. And then the fact that the core story plays in terms of, it's I don't know, it's the core story of Doctor Strange's arc here, where again he's kind of going over like the choices that were made during the Endgame debacle, and just kind of like living with those choices and seeing him just kind of, I don't know, I like where ultimately we go with that story with him.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's not a whole lot there. Just I don't know, I think it's probably the most entertaining of the Marvel movies this year for me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. LEV says she hated it.
Hmm.
I don't feel that strongly about it. I just very much agree with your whole thing that you said about like, yeah, for a movie called Multiverse of Madness, there wasn't really a lot of madness or multiverses. There was some madness and a couple multiverses, but
But it's like for every shortcoming that we have there, we also have like Doctor Strange as a Marvel zombie practically with like a cape of like an awesome cape of like of demon souls that are like flying him around.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, there is, I mean, obviously the best stuff in the movie is the stuff that you can clearly tell is like Sam Raimi, like Marvel basically giving Sam Raimi a bone.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it's a lot of fun with all that stuff. It's just kind of hard to discount it. Where it's like I'm not like waiting for like is Shuri gonna suit up yet?
I will say I am really kind of sick of the whole thing where people are basically being like, suck it, Marvel! Everything, everywhere, all at once is the ultimate multiverse movie.
Now, to be
They
fair,
kick
Tiki,
your ass at your own game.
that was kind of you when everything everywhere all at once came out, though.
Yeah, but you're not wrong, but I just feel like people have just really, really just taken that too far. I don't know. I created a monster, maybe. Anyways.
Yep.
All right, my number day. You already went over it. Not going to spend too much time on it. Glass Onion. It's interesting because I really do think that Knives Out and Glass Onion are like. I feel like they're really good companion pieces to each other because I think Knives Out has the better characters and Glass Onion probably has the better mystery. And I don't know. I do think that Glass Onion it has a lot of high highs to it. I really love all the stuff with the Mona Lisa. As I said in our spoiler cast, the whole thing with the screenwriting of I want to be mentioned in the same sentence as the Mona Lisa and how that pays off is just perfection from a writing point of view. Daniel Craig is doing just a lot of heavy lifting with his accent. I love the do I need to watch Knives Out to watch Glass Onion? No, I wouldn't say so. Right, Dragon?
Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, you don't need to like
Yeah.
see. The idea is like Ben always has like a case beforehand that he's done. I think there's like a vague allusion. There's like one vague allusion to like he knows from experience he doesn't like rich people, which basically is in reference to knives. But
Uh
that's all. Again, you're fine.
yeah, yeah. Um but yeah, I do think the characters in this movie are I don't again, I still think it's a little bit unforgivable that they actually that they managed to make a couple of the cast members in this thing boring. I mean, it's kind of crazy how they waste a couple people in this movie. Uh but it's still there's some really 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 high highs in this thing. I love the way it looks. I'm a sucker for island settings. I love all the rich blues. I think this movie probably has one of the best color palettes of any film this year. So yeah, there's a lot to love about it. I think the characters are somewhat shallow, but obviously I think on some level that is kind of the point. So yeah, all around a very very solid film. All right, number 8.
Yes, number 8, Elvis.
Man, I could not I could not engage with this movie, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I think it's either an
I think
obligatory.
Austin Butler is great. I just with the frantic editing of this movie, I actually wanted to see more of his performance.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, either as an obligatory thing, at the very least for performance. We know he's going to get an Oscar nomination for performance. I don't know what his competition is this year. I think it's going to be him and Brendan Fraser, honestly.
That's his main competition. Yeah,
I don't know how that's. I don't know if there's anyone
him,
else beyond
Brendan
that.
Fraser, and maybe Colin Farrell for Banshees of Inisherin.
Okay. Well, regardless, I was saying I don't know if this movie itself for Best Picture, if it's going to get kind of like as just kind of be put in there to kind of fill out the thing or not. But yeah, this is so rarely do we attempt to do a full-on Elvis biopic. Usually, we've done two versions of the Elvis biopic with him meeting Nixon. Oddly enough, but so rarely do we do like the Elvis biopic. I think it's only been done really one other time with Kurt Russell with the John Carpenter movie.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, yes, and so rarely, Tiki. I feel the cradle to grave stories. They're usually risky because we see what happens when we kind of
They're literally not stories. They're like Wikipedia articles. That's the problem.
so that's the thing. But here, though, I appreciated what Baz Luhrmann was going for. I like that he tempered his style, which I think resulted in a good movie. Albeit the Dutch choice with Tom Hanks is weird. It is. It was
I
a very
genuinely think it's Tom Hanks' worst performance I've ever seen.
well.
I genuinely think that.
I don't think
Like,
it's a.
I think it's worse than Geppetto.
I mean, I don't. I don't know. I don't know if we can call it a worse performance. I think it's just more like
I
a worse
think it is
byproduct.
more destructive to the movie than Geppetto. I will say that
Well,
much.
given that there's a very obviously Tom Parker has a very important role in this movie, which again I like structurally
Yeah,
what it's
he's a
doing.
central role, and his
Yeah.
performance is terrible.
Well, I think it's more distracting than it is terrible, Tiki. That's where I think the line is. I don't think it's necessarily killing the movie, but it's just like okay, well we're doing a Dutch Tom Parker for some reason, but that's what we're saddled with here, so let's just go
Tom
for it.
Parker had like a very, very subtle Dutch accent if
Yeah,
you watch his interviews, and Tom Hanks is going full blown cartoon
I
character.
want to be clear. That's the director's. That's not him doing that. That's the director telling him to do that.
I get that, but it's still just.
Okay,
I mean,
point to you.
and keep in mind, like when I say performance, I mean part of a performance is the directing on it.
Yeah.
So I do take that into consideration.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So like we see Elvis's rise, and we see the struggle without ultimately like losing the core of who he is. I think it's a powerful story, which of course is marked by tragedy. But what happens to Elvis? I mean, it's the fact that Austin Butler, what he's doing, you feel so bad for this humble kid who's now like being prodded and primped on stage, and he's just being essentially being tortured for Tom Parker's wallet. You know,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. There's such an element of tragedy there. I think was very well represented. Just this. My family, they've always loved Elvis, so there's a personal one for me in that regards. This is like one that they very much cared about. They saw it with me, so I don't know. This was like,
I honestly think I would like this movie a lot more if the editing wasn't so frantic.
yeah, but I mean, compared to what Lerman usually does, isn't that like comparatively is a bit more? Is
No,
it
not even necessarily. No, I
okay?
mean, I think movies like The Great Gatsby, there's definitely, I don't know, like it is part of his style, but I think this movie just went way too over the top with like the cuts every 2 seconds.
Hmm.
Like, and I think the cuts every 2 seconds work for some scenes. Like, I do genuinely think that the first time he performs for a crowd might be one of the best like performance scenes in any music biopic with the way that Lerman shoots it and edits it together and everything. And also, I love again Austin Butler is phenomenal in this role.
He was perfectly cast. He did an
One of the
exceptional
things I
job.
really appreciate with his performance is that you can see his voice and his accent and cadence evolve from like young Elvis to old Elvis, and I really think he just digs like there's so much nuance there.
Yeah.
My favorite moment in the whole film is like right at the very beginning where he's talking to Tom Parker and he's all like, all like bright eyed and he's just like, but what if I forget the words on live radio? I don't know, just that delivery is just perfect.
I mean, of course,
Was
for me,
edited too much like Moulin Rouge, but it works for Moulin Rouge, but didn't work for Elvis. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Moulin Rouge, it like again, it does. I feel like the flashier a movie is, the flashier, the better that editing works. And I know it's been a while since I've watched The Great Gatsby, but I want to say The Great Gatsby calmed the fuck down with the editing in the more quiet moments. And obviously in the big party scenes, it was edited very frantically. But
We gotta remember though, even with that logic though, TQ and Elvis is kind of a flashy. There's very much kind of a flashy personality in terms of the later years of Elvis. So I don't know. I don't know.
I hear you.
But by the same token, for me, the big benchmark of success for this movie, which I think they nailed perfectly, was the not perfectly in terms of the biopic and everything 100% right, but in terms of the execution, the "If I Can Dream" sequence where Elvis is doing the big "If I Can Dream" moment when he did the '68 comeback when he's in the suit and he's doing the song after Kennedy got after
Uh,
Bobby Kennedy got shot.
uh,
So that and again, certainly, honestly, when I rewatched the movie, I love when he stands up to Colonel Tom Parker and he's singing "Trouble," the whole like the evil song, which is like when he's tantalizing the crowd of ravenous women. It's hilarious. So yeah, man, again, Elvis primarily a performance piece, but it's got a lot. I don't know. In terms of seeing Elvis represented on screen, I think he did a great job. In terms of
right.
representing him on screen, so yeah.
Ooh, okay. So my number 7 is going to be Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. You have not gotten around to this yet, have you?
I mean, take it's not for like lack of. If it were streaming, I would have watched it. I just had to pick and choose. And honestly, there was like one gag in the trailer, kind of two things in the trailer. Puss in Boots turned me off to it. Not that I thought it was gonna be bad, but just in terms of like, I don't think I'm gonna make the effort to go out and see it. There's a bathroom joke. That's kind of a cheap one. And then it's the fact of it looks like it wrote itself into a corner with the ending, just based on what the movie's about. It's gonna be the last wish. Okay, he's either gonna get his wish, which he's gonna get the lives back, or at least one life back, or he's gonna just live life dangerously. So it's kind of like it's telegraphed like, okay, the movie's gonna be A or B. There's no middle ground there. At least it feels like. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I just think the movie it's just one of those movies that just kind of goes above and beyond its premise. I mean, I don't even love this as much as other people do. I do think that there's a couple pacing issues. I do think it takes a little too long for the main plot to get going. But once it does, I mean, this movie really is pretty phenomenal when it comes to being just an absolute shot of adrenaline for DreamWorks. I mean, it is just like first of all, the animation Dragon, it's like you need to see it. Like I'm not saying rush out and see it in theaters right away, but obviously when it's streaming, you need to see it for the animation. I mean, it's better than the Bad Guys as far as animation goes. Like it's a step up from that style. It's like they take that kind of 2D, 3D aesthetic and they just go nuts with it. Got Aquatad in the comment saying this Push with Last Wish one of your favorite DreamWorks movies. I don't know. I
There's
do
a
think
lot
it's
of
my
DreamWorks movies.
yeah, I do think it's my second favorite Shrek movie after Shrek 2. I will say that much. And that's coming from someone who's always like kind of thought the original Shrek, like obviously major cultural touchstone. Literally every frame of that film was a meme nowadays. Maybe a little bit overrated, when it first came out. Like I am one of those people that very much thinks that Monsters Inc. should have won the Oscar that year for Best Animated Film over Shrek. But I digress. Jacob is in the comments saying the final battle is a visual masterpiece. Yeah, everything about this movie is a visual masterpiece. I love Dragon. Basically, the villain of this movie is essentially just the personification of death. And the whole theme of this movie is Puss in Boots. Like it's basically a meditation on death and morality and right. It's genuinely got. What really impressed me about it, Dragon, is it genuinely has those like hard hitting, emotional thematic cores that movies like Kung Fu Panda and Megamind have. You know what I mean? Where it's like it's got that sort of like really fun premise at the top, but it really is exploring some pretty profound stuff. I mean, even the comic relief dog, who, by the way, that was like my big sticking point in the trailer, is like, oh, I'm gonna hate this dog, aren't I? And no, Yeah, I feel like the dog is like a kind of like an Olaf in Frozen 1 sort of situation where the trailer made him look a lot more annoying than he actually was. But even that dog has just like a ridiculously, almost comically tragic backstory. But I especially want to highlight the villains in Puss in Boots, who I genuinely think are Dragon. I mean, I'm not even being like hyperbolic when I say this. I think the villains in this movie are on caliber with the fairy godmother and Farquaad. Like, I think they are on that level. You have Goldilocks, who is played by my girl Florence Pugh, and oh my god, like God, that woman is just so fucking talented. I mean, she's wonderful in this. Dragon, they have this hilarious fixation with her needing things to be just right, and it's like a big like mental health like OCD of hers, and it's hilarious. And then freaking oh god, John Mulaney, Dragon. He plays Jack Horner. Do you remember Little Jack Horner, the nursery rhyme?
Not really. No.
He sat in a corner and he put his thumb in a pie or something like that.
Put his thumb in a pie.
Yeah.
No, I
Well,
never.
so it's a basically the whole point of it is that it's a really dumb nursery rhyme that not a lot of people remember, and he's pissed about that. He's pissed that he's forgotten about. Um, and my point is that he has a yeah big Jack Horner here. Jack Horner in this movie is I love his design so much. So much. It's such a fun design. It's an awesome design. All right. So yeah, I like I said, I think my main issue with this movie is just kind of like we spend a little bit too much time in that, in the cat lady house at the beginning. I feel like the pacing of that sequence goes on a little too long. But other than that, I think it's nearly flawless. Like I really do. I honestly I probably would objectively have to I don't necessarily think it's quite on the same like god tier of DreamWorks films, like like the Shrek 2s and Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon, Megamind, but it is like right below that tier. Um, Rumpelstiltskin is a top tier Disney villain. I will agree to that. I will not. I don't think Shrek Forever After is the best Shrek. I mean that's totally fair if that's your opinion, but. Anyways, Dragon, number 7 for you.
Okay. So yeah, getting into the top five. This is tricky. 7, 6, and 5 were really
Mm.
it was a long, steadfast debate.
I
So
honestly
seven.
had that issue with my entire top 5. My entire top 5, I kept switching around.
Well, honestly, it's weird. 4 was kind of locked in. It was just like the top three, and then 7, 6, and 5. Those were like it was like a shell game. So 7 for me is Spirited.
Oh, okay.
See, Spirit, I thought was like one of the most impressive movies I've seen on Apple TV Plus. May or may not be saying much, but again, they really did a great job on this. It's an excellent update on Christmas Carol with Ryan Reynolds. Could have been what Apple TV Plus usually likes to do. Could have been a celeb cash in, but again, it was clever and it was funny and pretty good music. A little heavy on the songs, but not. It's a musical. You know what you're getting into. Had had nice surprises in it. With sorry, yeah, had some nice surprises in it with like the most retold story ever. With a Christmas
Mhm,
Carol, like we know how this story like the back of our hands. You don't even need to
mhm.
read the book. We all have memorized it at this point. We know what happens. We know what's said. Just a question: Are we going to show? Are we going to show Belle? Are we going to show the sister? Are we going to show both? That's the only thing. That's the only remark. That's usually the only change that we make, and
Right,
occasionally we
right.
buy it. Unless it's the Muppets, we bifurcate Jacob Marley. Regardless, so yes, I mean, kind of like zesting things up a little bit here. It's a welcome change. Of course, Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell, great chemistry together. Again, it's kind of in a sense like, hey, what if you took Deadpool and Buddy the Elf, take the cynic, take the optimist, put them together in this movie as a buddy comedy. I love the world building. I love how basically in orchestrating a Christmas Carol kind of moral lesson for one really, like SOB, it basically all the work involved is like Christmas for ghosts. It's pretty much getting ready all year round for one night. So yeah, it's a welcome new Christmas movie that I hope that God gets a DVD release because I will not have Apple TV Plus forever, and I want to rewatch this movie
Oh,
next
I feel
Christmas.
that. Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, they've released their stuff before, like Defending Jacob, for example. That got a DVD release, so it's possible.
Would you
So
like to know the latest update on my endeavor to fucking get Apple TV Plus?
well, not particularly, but I don't think I can stop you.
So my grandma turns out to have an Apple device,
Why?
but I cannot sign out of any of her accounts.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm stuck. Because anyways, Apple TV Plus. Yeah, I need to somehow figure it out. Anyways, I'm sorry. Okay, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think at this point, like culturally, Muppets Christmas Carol is almost like objectively the best version. And like unironically too, I just think it straight up is the best adaptation. Muppets or no Muppets. Okay, my number 6. Dragon, honestly, I'm not even gonna lie. At a certain point, this was my number 1. But thinking about it a little bit more, I do think it's an improvement over the first, and I do think it is like visually spectacular, but it's a better plot than the first movie. Not the greatest plot though. Obviously I'm talking about Avatar: The Way of Water. I mean just visually, this movie, I mean, it's insane. It really is. It lives up to the hype. I honestly think this movie had a bigger like wow factor for me than the first film did, just as far as the technology. I mean, this movie is so far above anything else that we've been seeing that I legitimately feel bad for any other movies coming out in the next year because they are just objectively not going to look nowhere near this good. I mean, it's insane how freaking good this movie looks. That being said, I think the characters, it's like the one positive thing I can say about the characters in this film is that unlike the first movie, they aren't just absolutely stock, like cardboard cutouts. But I do think one of the big problems I have with this film is that there's just too many Sully children. I really think they could have gone with like 2 or 3, but there's 5 of them and Spider. So I really feel like the movie kind of like it goes from like, okay, nobody cares about any of these characters. And there's that whole joke about, the one guy who went around interviewing people trying to name Avatar characters. And they overcompensated on that by being like, okay, this movie's going to have all the characters. And honestly, I think that's a shame because like it does sideline some of the more interesting people in this movie. Like I want to see a lot more of, for example, Kate Winslet as the queen of the water tribe. She's like barely in this movie. I'm sure she'll have more to do in the third movie, but for someone as high profile as Kate Winslet, who's obviously like, a big name in like James Cameron basically made her career, she really does have nothing to do. I mean, people are saying Neytiri gets sidelined, but at least Neytiri has a freaking awesome, like, standout scene. If you know, you know. Like, Kate Winslet has nothing. So I do think that's one of the problems with this film is that they try to have a solid ensemble of characters, but James Cameron still is not like he just does not know how to get all of the characters moving in the screenplay in a way where they all functionally have stuff to do. But that being said, like I mean, this movie, like the whole second hour of this film is basically just vibing in the ocean, and it is so my jam. It is so my jam. I also really, 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 really love the stuff that they do with the whales in this movie. I don't love the fact that they throw in the whole thing with like, oh, the brain fluid of the whales is the new unobtainium. I don't love how that's thrown in basically in the last like hour of the film. It feels kind of half-assed, but I love what they do with the whales as far as the story and the themes. Um, just on a visual level, they're breathtaking. I don't know. There's a lot of things in this movie that I really do love. And that being said, on some level, I do think that the first movie is you speak whale. I do think that the first movie actually, like, based on the framing device of Jake Sully being kind of like the audience stand-in, and also the whole arc of him, like in the real world he doesn't have use of his legs, and then obviously is an Navi. Like, I honestly feel like the first movie probably has a bigger sense of like build and escapism, and probably works a little bit better as stock as that story is. It works a little bit better as a story than this, because honestly, this movie really does. The story of this movie really is just kind of like, all right, and we're setting a bunch of stuff up for the next movie. But I mean, it just, like I said, as far as technology goes, it's pretty mind blowing. I mean, I'm not going to forget you know me, Dragon. I'm not a big effects guy, but this just really got me. I mean, it's just, I'm going to stop going on about it. Ooh, all right, number 6 on your end.
This is one I really wish I could have put in the top 5, and again, it was competitive. Clerks 3.
Yeah, I still need to see this.
You do? Yeah, it's.
I gotta say, I'm nervous about it. Given Kevin Smith's recent output, I'm nervous about it.
Yeah, amazingly, my father loved this, which I did not see coming. Like in the
My
slightest.
grandma loved Avatar 2, which I didn't see coming. She is not a sci-fi person.
Well, no, my grandmother adores James Cameron and Avatar. She loves it.
I remember that. Yeah,
yeah, that's the thing. She goes gaga for old Cammy boy. But yeah. So of course, the Clerks films have always been kind of check-in points and reflections for Kevin Smith and kind of certain points in his life. So it's kind of a nice kind of little kind of I don't know. It's kind of a nice little self-reflective thing for the filmmaker. And it's interesting because a lot of life has been lived for Kevin Smith since Clerks too. It's been roughly, I forget if it's been almost 20 years, almost, a little give or take, a little under. But yeah, a lot of life's been lived.
Feel old. I was in high school when that movie came out.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing. A lot of life's been lived since Clerks 2, which of course I love Clerks 2. I think we all did. Clerks 2 had a lot of pathos to it.
I think that's kind of objectively his best movie, honestly.
I'd be inclined to agree with you, D. I think Clerks 2 might be his best movie. So, sorry, 16 years. That's what it's been 16 years since.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. All right.
Yeah, between Clerks 2 and Clerks 3. So, point 16
I'm
years.
Not that ancient.
Yeah, roughly, there's at least like roughly a decade or so between movies. That's kind of the idea. Anyway, so, yes, this movie is kind of a combination of the first. Honestly, it's kind of a combination of the first 2 Clerks movies and a little bit of kind of a little infusion of Jay and Silent Bob reboot in terms of there was a meta element with the parallels to Kevin Smith's life, which again were always they were subtle in the first 2 Clerks, and and here with Jay and Silent Bob reboot, it's very much more direct and more like, hey, we'll kind of like celebration of the kind of the View Askewverse,
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's basically the Clerks are making the first Clerks movie. That's the premise. So it's like they are making. So Randall, after a heart attack that almost kills him, he decides he wants to make a movie, which essentially is the first Clerks film. That's the premise, and it feels like an episode of the Clerks cartoon in terms of that plot, which I think is really funny. It feels like something Randall would do. And yeah, it's one of those movies, like it's a going home again movie, and the fact that Kevin Smith left us, we'd have never gotten Clerks 3, which is always like talked about. Like, oh, I'm going to do that Clerks 3, and he got sidetracked with everything and such. So there's something kind of special about this movie. It's the movie we never thought we were going to get. Honestly, the only thing I don't like about this movie, it's very minor. The storyline with Elias is a little weird to me, in that Elias he's basically praying for Elias is praying for Randall's life after the heart attack, and he because he feels responsible. Got into like a little tiff with him, and then he keeled over because he wished the Lord would strike him down.
Oh,
He's a very religious source. Basically, he turns to Satanism, and then Randall survives, so he becomes a Satanist in the movie.
yeah, that sounds
Well, like, he
awkward.
doesn't he doesn't know what a Satanist is, so he's basically just dressing really heavy metal, like really wearing bizarre outfits. It's just
Uh,
kind of so again. It's not. It's like, what if an idiot has no idea what a Satanist really is? He's like devil, and he's basically wearing absurd costumes that get more and more absurd as the movie goes. It's a little too broad for my. It just feels like, yeah, we're having some
that
serious
actually, I
scenes.
don't. That does not sound great because I actually think that Elias was one of the more realistic characters.
That's the thing. So I
As
mean,
far as like he's, I always took him as like the like the guy that you don't personally gel with, but you kind of have to coexist with in a job. You know what I mean?
yeah, sure. So I mean, again, so Elias is kind of like, I was not thrilled with the depiction of Elias, but it didn't really kill the movie or anything. It was just like, oh, and there's Elias and another costume change. But yeah, so there's a finality applied to this, Tiki. It's really good. Again, the pathos really shines, and again, it's very much a summation of Kevin Smith today, and that either that's for better or for worse. I mean, I'll let the viewer decide, but I mean, I rather liked it, man. This one struck a chord with me. It felt really personal. I really liked it.
All right. And we're entering the top five. Okay, my number five is going to be Bones and All. Yes, the cannibalism love story from the guy who directed A Love Story starring a cannibal. Sorry, couldn't resist. Couldn't resist. um, but seriously, this movie, what I really, really admire about Bones and All is it takes what is essentially a young adult, like, edge lord romance novel that came out in the height of the Twilight craze and basically gives it like the great American novel treatment, where this truly feels like an adaptation of a really, really great book. And I know for a fact the book is not great. It just has like this really literary quality to it. You can tell everything about this movie is like so meticulously thought out. The world building, the rules of the society. It is just it is a very immersive movie in almost like the opposite kind of way of Avatar, where it just kind of like immerses you in this way of life that you never thought would be depicted on screen. And what I do really love about it is that, like, I love the core conceit of this film where it treats the idea of cannibalism, which is obviously like a very fucking weird taboo, and I am not trying to condone it in any way, shape, or form. But the characters in this movie, you can tell they would do anything to not have the urges that they have. You can tell that they are very actively aware of the fact that them having these urges is outwardly destroying their lives. And there is nothing they can do about it because they were pretty much born that way. And I fucking love that exploration of evil. I find it so fascinating. And also, yeah, Mark Rylance, just goddamn, he's terrifying in this movie, just utterly terrifying. And just, I mean, his performance shook me so hard that I literally had to whip out my camera and record a snippet of it for Dragon and be like, Dragon, look how creepy Mark Rylance is. Oh my fucking god.
Very random. It's very much, what am I watching right now?
I don't blame you with the context, yeah. Um oh, you hated Bones and All. Yeah, I mean, It's not a movie for everyone, Colby. It's not a movie for everyone. You
More
know,
or
film
less
is
movies.
subjective. My girlfriend made me watch it 3 times in a row. It's gotten worse every time. Glad you liked it though. I don't know. Maybe you having to. I could see how specifically if your girlfriend really likes it, like it is a weird couple movie to watch. It is like, it's technically a romance, but it's a very nihilistic film. So yeah, uh, I don't know, but yeah, it did strike a chord with me. Like I said, I don't necessarily think the film is trying to be. Um, I don't think it's trying to be like sympathetic to its characters, but I do think it is trying to inherently make you understand, the the core complexities and dilemmas that come from having these urges that just automatically make you a monster in the eyes of society. I really think it's a fascinating character study of that. Colby, I am very curious. What did you think of Mark Rylance's performance in this? Because that was my hands down my main takeaway. All right, you're number 5, Dragon.
My number 5 is Lightyear.
Oh man, I'm
Okay,
not gonna
so
say anything. I'm not gonna say. I can't. Go ahead. Go ahead.
so
I think this is the one you and I disagree on the most this year. This
what?
probably would have been in my bottom 10.
All right.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Anyway, yeah. So possibly this going into this year's is like my most anticipated film of 2022, and it's a mixed bag, no question. I agree, it's a mixed bag because again, Act One of this movie is everything I hoped for. It's we're barring the obvious. No, we aren't able to do Buzz Lightyear Star Command.
This movie would have worked out so much better
Yeah,
if it was more like the pulp sci-fi Buck Rogers sort of deal. It would have been so
yeah.
much better.
Anyway, point being, barring in mind the obvious thing we all wished would happen, that we knew going into it we weren't going to get Buzz Lightyear Star Command, which is always like a bitter pill to swallow, but we knew that was the case. So barring that, Act One was everything I hoped it was going to be. I mean, it hit me on a personal place, man. Everything was working for me in Act One. I mean, Buzz Lightyear had a flaw that I really have had a kinship with. That really struck me. Buzz Lightyear has trouble asking for help in the midst of a crisis. I get that.
I can relate to that too. Yeah.
So that one really just kind of hit me. The fact that I've so much of my life has been impacted by Buzz Lightyear. And man, he has similar problems that I have. Man, what do you know? And also, he's played by Chris Evans, which is again, it was like, man, they're making this movie for me at this point.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I mean, the montage in Act One breaks my heart, kind of like married life to a degree. And I mean, tears were forming, man. I was head over heels for everything that was going on in Act One, and capping it off like that was just phenomenal. And of course, as I mentioned, I love Chris Evans playing kind of the flesh and blood Buzz Lightyear, and I hate this ever since the beginning. I hate that people still don't get the distinction. Everyone going with the whole like, oh no, we ousted the other guy. No, we didn't oust the other guy. So there's the toy and there's the human. There's the human, flesh
Right.
and blood. There's the toy, different voice.
That
Okay, it's
doesn't
not
bother
that hard.
me nearly as much as the whole thing of like, this was Andy's favorite movie. Dragon, honestly, that is like a big part of my distaste for this movie. I'm like, this is a solid sci-fi movie that would be no children's favorite movie, especially in the 90s.
It does. I don't know. I still think the aesthetic feels like, again, with the whole like the design of everything, it does feel like it is a '90s film. But still, there's a question if Andy would, with the movie that we end up having, if Andy would gravitate towards this movie as much as he did. I don't know.
Mhm.
But for me, here's the issue. I have two predominant issues. One of which you and I share. The other, honestly, I think we're both pretty simpatico on this. I think I'm just a little more like, maybe let's say forgiving of it. But let me put it this way: it's still a problem though. The big issue I have with this movie is Angus MacLane. I love that he was able to direct this. He did a great job on Toy Story Terror. He's been in
Mhm.
Journeyman
Mhm.
through all the films. He's a great animator. Angus MacLane's a great guy. And I learned on the behind the scenes of Lightyear what happened. He had two choices. He had two story paths to take, and they had like a deleted thing, which obviously still would need to be reworked to get Act One still working the way it does here. But let's just say there was a version of this movie in which Zurg was Buzz's father, and that version was more interesting. It was good. and again, I think he took a story path that was not that, which is what we ended up having the last movie, and I think that was a mistake. And I wish McLean had taken that other story route, maybe to try to rework things to kind of meld those together. So we could have had Act One, then we could have had the more interesting Zurg Buzz father son thing. It's just because of what he went with, he wrote himself into a corner where, hey, Zurg's not all bad, and that creates two major problems. One, I don't buy this guy becomes evil Emperor Zurg in any franchise because of that. And two, it's the fact that, well, Zurg has a point. Zurg is not necessarily wrong with what he wants to do, and it's more of a debate. And because of that, we have no conflict, which we have forced into a conflict for Act Three. So basically, I just feel the movie Act Three and everything's based on that choice. I think kind of crumbles and the dominoes kind of fall down, which is the thing that bums me out about this movie because I love everything up to that. And then the other issue is, again, it's an unavoidable one. Our supporting cast is okay, but obviously very inferior to the supporting cast of Buzz Lightyear Star Command. And with the Taika Waititi's popularity waning, that does not help.
I genuinely think that Taika Waititi's character in this film is the single worst character in the entire Pixar canon. I genuinely think that.
I mean, Tiki, you might be right, but I'd have to evaluate all the Pixar films, which would take some time.
I mean, I feel like his only competition is like some of the throwaway junk from Cars 2. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm
like
saying.
Like the evil monocle car from Cars 2 or something.
Hey, Professor Zundap was good, man.
Right.
Yeah, great design. Anyway, so again, overall, man, there's still. I mean, again, going by favorites. That's the main reason it's up here, Tegan. I'm going by favoritism because obviously, given the fact the third act doesn't work, this thing would objectively be further down. But it's that this movie I had a lot of hope for. I still love what I love about this thing very passionately. I love the design. I love the technology. I love the human kind of appeal of the human layers that we've added to Buzz Lightyear. We didn't quite, obviously we had a lot of humanity, but it was a very different story in terms of like a character coming to grips with I'm not who I thought I was in this case. Anyway, here's the thing. I desperately would want more. I would want the sequels of this, but because of how it performed, it's never going to happen. Here's the thing that kills me most. It's a very minor thing, but here's what kills me most about this movie. Because of the way it performed, I'm never going to get my dream piece of merchandise from this movie. I am never going to get that shuttle, the shuttle that is at the end of the movie, the spaceship that Buzz Lightyear crash lands in, which I'm obsessed with from Toy Story, and I want that as a vehicle because they keep making like all the bazillion versions of the XL-15, and I already got that. I want the shuttle, darn it. So that ticks me off, and it's like, please make that ship, please.
You know what I think the actual biggest adaptation sin of this film was?
What do you got?
No LGMs.
Yeah, and then they had.
Not even a fucking cameo, not even an Easter egg. I think that's insane.
I mean, again, Tiki, I feel you on that, but I do understand the logic of they made a very deliberate choice in this movie, which means the LGMs could not be in it. They made a choice of no aliens in this movie. They had plants.
That's insane.
They had plants and they had bugs, but that's as far as they got. They had no sentient alien life, which is why we didn't have our Buzz Lightyear Star Command cast. And I assume it was probably a domino thing of like, okay, if we want to differentiate ourselves from Buzz Lightyear Star Command, which means we don't have alien characters, that means we can't have the LGMs. So I'm assuming that's the train of logic there. So it's unfortunate, but that's the bed that they made, and I just wish the end product were a little stronger so it could be more defensible, but as it stands, it is not.
All right. So we've got a few comments here on this. Let's see. LEB says, nothing against this movie, but I don't like that it's canon because Toy Story is so old that Lightyear looks more detailed than the real life universe. I mean, you're not wrong. I don't blame that on the movie itself, but yeah, it is.
You could always say everything looks more glamorized in the movies than real life. You could.
Well, that's basically the core thesis of Babylon, which we'll get to.
Well, there you go.
Let's see. Jacob says this movie is like a gritty reboot of Andy's favorite movie. Let's see. LEB just says Andy should get better tastes. Yeah. Let's see. Andy, I don't know. This really strikes me, Dragon. This is like like this is like a great comment here. Colby says Andy really loves seeing Buzz lose his best friend in real time. Like, I really do feel like that strikes the heart of why the whole like this is Andy's favorite movie thing just really derailed the whole film for me right off the bat because
Well,
it's like
yeah, but what if Andy's a little like us? What if Andy appreciates good cinema? I don't know.
at that age though,
I don't know how. The thing is, Andy like. I'm trying to remember the age. What age was Andy?
he was
Andy's
like
probably
he
like.
must have been like what, like five,
No,
six?
that's the thing.
Not
No,
that old.
no, that's a no. He's not 5 or 6. He's 5 or 6 would match up with. I think he's like. Do you think he's 10 in the first Toy Story?
Maybe, I don't know.
I'm saying if he's 9 or 10, he's like the age of Arnold. I mean, so like, what do you?
All right, yeah. Well, I don't want to get over. I don't want to get into those semantics.
At point, like, let's not dwell.
Well, I'm sorry. Our beautiful commenters are.
Well, no, they. I mean, if they want to bring it up, they can. I'm just saying we don't want to get into all the semantics of it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm. Cars 2. I believe everyone. Dragon, you're a believer of Cars 2, right?
I mean, yeah, I'm still. I mean, yeah, but it's a fun summer action movie, and it wasn't
Yeah,
shooting for the
I
stars
think
and
it's
delivered. So,
genuinely. I still think Cars 2 probably has some of Pixar's best action sequences, maybe outside of
yeah,
the Incredibles films.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Mater stuff is a little silly, but I actually kind of like Finn McMissile as in a vacuum.
What people don't get about Cars too is just the fact that it wasn't shooting for the stars, which is why
Uh,
people are flabbergasted about it. No, they're not trying to top Toy Story 3, which is like the
and
benchmark
it
for it. It's
was
like
like genuinely the first Pixar movie that was not shooting for the stars.
that's what I'm saying. Like they knew we're not going to be able to top Toy Story 3 like right out of the gate like this. We're going to need to ramp it down, which is why you get Cars 2 and you get Brave.
Right, right. And
No.
I think this movie is a better movie than like, let's say Brave or The Good Dinosaur.
The Good Dinosaur was a troubled production, but anyway.
Yeah. Jacob or I'm sorry, yeah, Frozone Aquatad said Lightyear made maybe one a Frozen movie. That would be really interesting for sure.
I wouldn't mind a Frozen spinoff. That'd be great, but we'd have to see the wife though.
Yeah.
We couldn't put her off screen for a whole movie. We can't do that.
What Pixar side character should get a movie? Well, we're already a little
Yeah, we
over
don't.
long on this, so that's a good question though.
That is a good question though.
I'll think about it and maybe give you an answer at the end.
Hmm.
If Toy Story Land is canon, then this kid has thousands of dollars worth of building blocks. He's an enigma.
Yeah.
All right. Finally. I'm sorry. We spent way too much time
Yeah.
on that. My number 4. Nope. And this, honestly, Dragon, on a rewatch, I do feel like I still love it. I do think that this movie does have a couple pacing issues that keep it. Because if you remember, I was super high on this thing. Like and I still think like honestly, all of my top 4 are some of the best movies of the past couple years. But when I saw Nope, I genuinely said it was like the best movie since The Lighthouse for me. And I'm not sure if I still think that, but I do really, really like it still. I mean, ironically enough, I think the stuff that really resonates with me on Nope is actually the monkey stuff. I really think that the Stephen Yeun side plot and what that does and what like I think it was a stroke of genius on Jordan Peele's part. I really do. It's almost like a Rorschach test of a plot where it could mean any number of things. I do think that the main story with Daniel Kaluuya and Kiki Palmer, it's great. Like they both do an excellent job in their roles. I just do think that there are some pacing issues. There are a few scenes with them that do drag a little bit. But the spectacle in this movie is there for real. Drake, have you seen this yet?
No, I haven't.
You should if you can. It's streaming on Peacock right now, actually. So I would recommend because it's not a horror movie. I really wouldn't classify it as a horror movie, really at all. It's honestly a horror movie in the same way that Jaws is a horror movie. That's kind of like the vibe that I get from it.
So it's not as horrific as say Us.
No, not even close. No, I think you can handle it just fine, like from a gore point of view. There's really no gore at all. Um, but yeah, I mean, just the alien design in this movie is one of the most like freaking creative things. Um, Nope is a masterpiece of a movie, but the chimp stuff is a master.
Mastery's masterpiece.
Yeah, yeah, I love the chimp stuff in this film. I like I said, I really just I really love how the movie intrigues you with the Gordy the chimp stuff, but it does not spell out what it means. And that is the thing that lost a ton of people with this movie. But that singular element is actually my favorite part of the film, if that makes sense. For me, I just really, really think that, just it just gives you so much to chew on. Just the idea of spectacle and the lengths that people will go to for spectacle. So I don't know. For me personally, I know that I need to rewatch Get Out. It's honestly been a while too long since I've watched Get Out. I definitely think Nope is better than Us. I like Us. I don't love Us. Us kind of crumbled under the weight of its own ambition, I think. But like honestly, like, before I rewatch Get Out, I do think that Nope is probably Jordan Peele's best movie. I like I think he's got an upward trajectory ahead. All right, number 4 for you.
The Whale.
Ah, god damn it. It's that good.
It's pretty good, Tiki.
Yeah, I really want to see it. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, so The Whale, I'll keep it simple. The Whale lives up to the hype. It again, they just give give Brendan Fraser the Oscar. I mean, I mean, he earned it. It's between him and Butler, man. It's a 50-50. They both did great jobs. It's kind of hard, like it's like here's a sitcom for you, Elvis and the Fat Man. They did it. but,
What if the
but
fat man is just an Elvis impersonator, but he's impersonating the fat years of
well, no,
Elvis?
that's the thing. They're a buddy. They're a buddy pairing. You have thin Elvis and you have fat Elvis,
Oh
but the
my
fat
god.
Elvis is the guy who dresses like Elvis who happens to be fat.
Right.
He doesn't like being called fat Elvis, but
Oh my god.
no. And all look, the Whale deserves a lot more sincerity to that. Point being, think this is one of the saddest movies you've ever seen.
That's what
And I
I've
don't.
heard. I've heard it's like aggressively sad.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. I mean, I don't. I can't. I'm hard pressed beyond some like the obvious go to being Schindler's List. I think that's more kind of like the kind of
You seen
beautifully
Requiem
tragic.
for a Dream?
I mean, not in a long while though. I mean, I guess that's
Because for my money, that's among I will say that's the most depressing mainstream movie I have ever seen in my life.
right. So even then, so that's the thing. This thing just it captures humanity so honestly. I know you've probably heard that a whole bunch, but it just does, man. It's basically it was the tagline for this movie should be "Sorry, Charlie" because the character's name is Charlie,
Oh,
and it's
sorry,
just
Charlie.
it's like, oh, sorry, Charlie, because I'm not. You're gonna look at Brendan Fraser not just because of how he looks, but you're just gonna feel like a sense of just utter pity. He's such a pitiable, good person
I
in
do
this
know
movie.
one of the details is that he doesn't even turn on his webcam for the class that he's
Yep.
teaching.
Oh, yeah. That's from the very beginning.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Essentially that's how the movie starts. Yeah.
Well, actually, I've heard that it starts with him,
Oh well. Actually, wait.
which is honestly a really big turnoff for me when I
Well,
heard
no.
that.
Well, I mean, do you want me to just tell you?
Well, I don't necessarily want to spell it out because it sounds kind of
Well,
gross,
not
but
that. I mean, I'll say technically it does start with the webcam thing, and then, well, when the movie gets started, well, yeah,
oh, okay,
so
yeah.
it's not they're not correlated. I'm just saying there's like kind of like there's kind of like a coda. There's like a cold open, and then there's the start of the movie, which essentially is well.
Is that
Well, yeah, it's essentially it's but
I
again,
I
see, I want
what
let me be clear. Let me be clear. Again, it's for capturing the human experience, but more so, it does lead to a plot thing. So it's not for
uh-huh,
nothing. So again, it's not like just thrown in there. It's kind of like It's kind of like what I say with Shape of Water. Shape of Water, the nudity in Shape of Water is not just thrown in there. It's with a purpose.
uh-huh.
So it's kind
Babylon
of
actually has a very similar kind of like we're gonna shock you right out of the gate kind of moment that I'll get into.
right. So that's what I'm saying. This movie's like humanity on full display. That's essentially
Uh-huh.
that's what it is. So it's a sobering situation that uh, Darren Aronofsky has just depicted so kind of flawlessly, and I think flawlessly to possibly the detriment with critics. I mean, we'll see. I don't know if this thing's getting great critical buzz. It's getting even the people who don't like the movie are loving Brendan Fraser's performance. That's the main uniting thing with all this. And I think honestly, the only reason that critics don't like it is that they think it's too sad. Which is, well, yeah, it's sad. It's supposed to be. So look at this guy. But I'll tell you, Tiki, man, without I don't want to talk about too much here, but it's I was fighting tears in Act
I
Three.
heard
It was
Sadie Sink is a fucking monster in this movie.
she is.
Oh, yeah, that's the main thing that intrigues me, honestly.
But I tell you, Tiki, man, I was legitimately fighting tears in Act Three. I was like, "Don't cry, darn it, don't cry." It
Yeah.
was like really powerful. Yeah, so it was very good.
All right. Okay, so I am going to say right off the top with my top three, Dragon. I've gone back and forth so many times. I'm not even kidding you. I literally just now made a switch from 2 to 3. Like
Now,
I am so my top three for me. I really do think all three of these films are just so high caliber. So yeah, I'm gonna go. Oh God, I'm not even sure, but I have to submit it. I have to submit it. All right. Number three for me is the Banshees of Inisherin. It's so hard. It's so hard because I love all three of these movies. I really do. Banshees of Inisherin, I do think the one thing that I feel like is kind of at a distance with this movie and why it's not with my other two, with my top two, is that on a cultural level, I feel like this movie is very nihilistic. And I don't necessarily think that is the type of story that we need right now. But my God, for a nihilistic, bleak, pitch black comedy about the nature of friendship and relationships and what it means to get sick of another person. And I mean, this is a powerhouse. Like I love Colin Farrell. And by the way, Dragon, did you know Colin Farrell has never been nominated for an Oscar?
like never.
Never. Isn't that insane?
That is insane. Yeah.
I genuinely think Colin Farrell is like one of our top tier actors. And this is, for my money, hands down, the best performance I've ever seen from him. I don't think I've seen every performance of his, but it is the best I have seen from him. I think his character is just so sympathetic but funny at the same time, and there's just such a razor's edge of comedy and tragedy in this movie that, and you know me, Dragon, when it comes to tone, it's a big sticking point. A lot of comedies that try and balance the drama have just fallen for me because they can't get that balance right, but this gets the balance right. It's a gorgeous looking movie. Again, with my island bias, it does take place on an island, and I have this weird thing where I love island settings, and this just feeds into that. Barry Keoghan, I know you're not as big of a fan of Barry Keoghan as I am, but I think this is hands down the best Barry Keoghan performance yet. Like, honestly, by a pretty considerable margin. I honestly think this movie is kind of like a really good, solid, like, level up in Barry Keoghan's career. And yeah, like I said, if not for the fact that the only reason why this is not, like I swear to God, I've been going back and forth, and this is a very solid top three. But I just think the other two just give me more joy, if that makes sense. Like I can see myself rewatching those movies for the euphoria of it all. Whereas, kind of like The Whale, I mean, obviously this movie is, it's a black comedy, but it is a comedy. There's a lot of laugh out loud moments in it. But it is dark. It is depressing. It is world weary. It will make you, it will make you contemplate life, and it might just make you have an existential crisis. And that is the type of film that I'm not necessarily going to want to rewatch over and over again, if that makes sense. Whereas my top two, I can definitely see myself watching over and over again. So, yeah, loved it. I'm genuinely rooting for it at the Oscars, especially Colin Farrell. If Colin Farrell somehow, I mean, I understand that Brendan Fraser is the big front runner and nobody's going to beat him. I get all that. But my God, Dragon, if Colin Farrell does not get nominated for this movie, it's going to be insane. All right. All right, you're number three. I'm sorry, really quick. Keeper Colby says, I love Banshees of Inisherin. I think I had it at number 4. Actually, think I laughed harder at this movie than any other this year. It gave me the Lighthouse vibes. It's my second favorite of all time. That's high praise. I wouldn't necessarily think it gave me the Lighthouse vibes, but the Lighthouse is like a wholly unique movie. But I kind of see what you're saying with the isolation of it all. All right, you're number 3, Dragon. I'm sorry.
Okay, again, just to reiterate, the top 3 were the hardest.
No, I hear you. I'm right there with you.
And again, it was an utter shell game, but it was a hard decision. Okay, number 3 for me is The Batman.
Really? I would have bet solid money on that being your number 1. All right.
I told you it was a hard decision. But again, I went by favorite, so I mean, it was a whole. So that's.
Go ahead.
So that's the thing. So
I'm trying to weed out what other movies you haven't talked about yet from this poster. I'm doing a process of elimination here. Go ahead.
Yes, well, I'm trying to go through that list, but yeah. So, so this was the risk of 2022, and thankfully Matt Reeves he delivered. It's a great Batman movie. It's year 2 of Batman, and it's one of the most it's one of the Batman movies with the most comic pulls. It feels like pulls from the comics that we've had. It's not a one for one. Obviously, we haven't quite done that with any of the movies, but I mean the closest we've gotten there's we've done things that feel like Batman comics in the Nolan movies, and we've put him in the Dark Knight Returns. Basically, the closest thing we've ever done is a lot of Dark Knight Returns stuff and Batman v Superman. It's as close as we've gotten here. We're doing more thematic and story pulls here, right, but directly from the comics, like Long Halloween, 0 Year, Earth 1, etc. So ultimately, this movie is that Robert Pattinson, great Batman. In this movie, at least, lousy Bruce Wayne. Which again, I'm hoping it's going to be a give it time sort of thing. And
that's kind of the point.
I know. I can't
just saying that's his character arc. He's meant to be a bad Bruce Wayne.
I don't know.
It is his character arc. Come on, it totally is.
I mean, really, a bad Bruce Wayne?
Yes.
That's
Bruce Wayne is in he's bad at running his company and he's bad at public relations. That's totally part of his arc.
I mean, maybe, Tiki, but we don't show any of the meetings where he's a bad Bruce Wayne in them, though. We just say he's like, hey, you got that meeting. And we don't see the meeting. Ergo, he's not really a good Bruce Wayne. We're not doing anything with him.
That's fair.
What I mean is, I think the better arc that I'm head over heels for in this movie is Batman going from vigilante to symbol. That's a great arc. That's at least intentional. At least
although I do think the third act is unfortunately a little messy to get there, which is why this movie kind of barely got outside of my honorable mentions.
Right. Yeah, it occurred to me. You did not put this anywhere on your list.
No, I like it a lot. I respect the hell out of it. Like I said, I really mostly just kind of have hangups with that third act.
So that's the thing. So again, obviously the Bruce Wayne thing is more of we got to see if the arc is going to be he gets better as Bruce Wayne in the other movies, which I assume is going to be the case, but we have to see. Otherwise, Pattinson just stinks at being Bruce Wayne, but we'll see. The issue I have 2 issues with this movie. Just the issue is Riddler is very close to being hushed with this interpretation of the Riddler, which is good. It's just really odd that it's we literally mentioned Thomas Elliot and stuff here in this movie with the Elliot family. It's just it's really weird. This guy, he has duct tape and everything. If he wrapped his head in duct tape, or at least he has a mask that already looks a little bit like duct tape, essentially hush. Essentially.
Yeah, right.
So it was a choice, and Riddler and Hush are kind of sometimes joined at the hip in that story. So I get what they're going for. it just felt like a little
I
odd.
mean, Riddler is obviously the more marketable of the two, so that's probably what the decision boiled down to.
Of course, I'm not saying it was necessarily the wrong choice. It's an aspired choice at the very least. I'm not sure how I feel about. But the other thing though is that the third act is very separate from our main story and tacked on. I want to say this though: the third act is not bad. It definitely feels like it's
Like,
we've
obviously, it ends on a high note.
it, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I can't discount the third act. And that the
And
third
you
act
know
needs
what? The third act of The Dark Knight, honestly, also a little kind of overlong and tacked on, if we're
well
being
that
completely fair.
well that's more of like well we have a character called
I'm
Two
talking
Face, so
specifically about the fairy stuff.
well, that's what I'm saying. That we have a Joker finale and we have a Two Face finale. It's a Two Face being we have two finishes, so it's kind of makes sense.
Uh,
This, on the other hand, is more of like I like this, but it is just kind of like okay, so we've done the Riddler story in which Batman unfortunately did not really outfox the Riddler. The Riddler just basically gave himself up at the end. We had a good scene though where they had that conversation in which he basically thinks no, we're not simpatico at all. So I love the Riddler just kind of misinterpreting the point. The fact that Batman has not become a symbol led to the Riddler just thinking, making the leap that we're vigilantes, we're one and the same, which again is
uh-huh.
why Batman needs to be a symbol like he becomes. But again, the third act feels very Zero Year esque, which I liked in correlation to Riddler's story. But again, it's a little too late. But what we do with it though is it leads to one of the best Batman moments. It leads to a perfect Batman moment on screen here, and I love it
Sure,
so much
sure.
when he's saving that kid and he's walking out of there with the red flare, and then of course the movie should have ended with him looking off into the distance, but then it doesn't because Matt Reeves.
Oh yeah, I mean, honestly, Dragon, that's another like major mark against it for me is the
Yeah,
fact that it had the perfect ending and it just
mhm.
squandered it.
I blame. I don't know how much of this is like the director's choice or not, but it feels like Matt Reeves is just terrified of post credit scenes. No, I can't have post credit scenes. No, you
Uh
didn't have post
uh
credit scenes or something like that. It's like, come on, man. The reason we have post credit scenes so you can have like a clean cut ending, and then you have
Right,
like
right,
there.
exactly,
So
exactly.
you
Yeah.
separate it from the mandated setup. Okay, you have the like, little tacked on thing at the end. And there's your ending. Okay, there's your effing credits moment.
I didn't even
I'll
like the Catwoman ending all that
that's
much,
what I'm
to
saying.
be
There's like two
honest.
pointless. There's two. Oh, I mean, they're okay scenes, but they ruin the flow
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
because we have like the perfect
I
symbol.
think I think if it ended where it should have ended, I
Because
genuinely think this movie could have been in my top 10.
it's per
I mean that.
because
You
I
know
had
me. An ending is like so pivotal for me.
because an injured woman looks upon Batman with hope, and then he's looking into the distance in broad. Like they justify Batman in broad daylight. That's
Uh,
impressive,
yeah, yeah,
and that
totally,
worked.
totally.
Okay, so that always kind of. But honestly, these are the factors that kind of made me ultimately settle on three out of the top three. This is what I'm saying. So
Uh,
yeah. Also, LEB says I like how the goon in the beginning looked like Doug Walker. It is rather cathartic. Thank you for
did you see Doug Walker's review of
yeah.
the Nostalgia Critic review where
I did.
they make like a meal out of that?
Yeah, I gotta tell you though, it just the idea of Nostalgia Creep being beat up by Batman is rather cathartic given the stuff that given every time I see his stupid ads. I like Nostalgia Creep. I hate the ads. I hate the stupid
I
cat focus.
genuinely think that Doug Walker has been on an upward trajectory over the past year or two with his content. I
I
genuinely think that.
I do, but that doesn't save him from those stupid ads though.
No, it doesn't.
I hate his ads, and that's what makes me want cathartically like to imagine
I mean,
that's what.
that man is just like he might as well just be the corporate mascot of stamps.com.
Yeah, I feel so bad for stamps.com. Like that should not be that they shouldn't settle for that. It's like that commercial that they have. It's like we don't need mascots.
Oh my god.
Anyway,
Okay, LEB said the pacing was a little weird. I felt like the movie was going to end 4 times. Yeah, exactly what we were saying. Yeah. Uh, I hope Giancarlo Esposito shows up as Two
I
Face.
want Giancarlo to be in every comic book movie because he's so darn good.
Colby, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I genuinely think that the wall was kind of like the low point for Doug.
Yep.
Like honestly, probably even like on a personal level, like like on an artistic level, even more so than the change the channel stuff. Which, by the way, Dragon, there is. I don't want to get into the weeds with this. There's been some counter change the channel stuff that is. It's interesting. I feel like the change the channel narrative is Slightly shifting.
Well,
Slightly shifting.
I pointed out since the beginning the majority of that thing I feel is on the level. There's just one the anniversary stuff is where I think there were some waivers in that, but we don't want to get into that right now.
Yeah, we don't want to get it, but
Yeah.
like, it's very interesting how that narrative, and like I am keeping tabs on that narrative. I will say that much. Anyways, okay. Anything else to say? I'm sorry.
No, it's it. Go on.
Okay, cool. All right, my number 2, Babylon. I was shocked that I loved this movie as much as I did. Obviously it has gotten a very divisive reaction from people, and I am not surprised. I genuinely think that it probably earns that reaction because it is the type of movie where you either are going to get into it or you are not. And I just saw this movie again. I saw it a second time last night. I am so locked into it. This is crazy. I honestly think I might like it better than La La Land, Dragon. I honestly oh man. I mean, where do I even start with this thing? I think from a purely filmmaking visual point of view, this is like an utter masterpiece. Like if La La Land, like Whiplash was an excellent character study, and La La Land was a great kind of like first showcase of the type of technical wizardry Damien Chazelle could pull off. This movie is like a level up from La La Land. I mean, it opens with like a 30-minute party scene that is one of the most raw and audacious and unbelievable pieces of filmmaking. It is, Dragon, this party scene, it is just, oh my God, I can't even tell you, man. I can't even tell you. It was fucking incredible. I mean, just the way that it introduces all these characters so seamlessly, and the raw energy of it, just how much is going on in the background in any one shot. Of course, the Damien Chazelle's kind of signature, like long pans and and dolly shots. It's so good. But then you get into the meat of the story, and I genuinely think these character arcs are so fucking good. I am passionate about this movie.
Really, I hadn't noticed.
I'm gonna make a bold statement here. You ready?
Yeah.
Hands down, the best Brad Pitt performance I've ever seen.
Well, really?
Hands down. Hands down. I like Brad Pitt in this film, like, because his character is basically like the quintessential, the silent movie star who couldn't hack it in the talkie era, right? And the movie's kind of like all about that transition from silent to talkies. And Dragon, what I feel that Brad Pitt is channeling in this movie is he is channeling kind of like how at one time he was like at the top of the game when it came to, the movie star era of Hollywood, right? Where movies could be like marketed on names. And now his star obviously he's still very beloved, but the actual movie star component of Hollywood is fading, and he is channeling that. And you feel, oh my God. I mean, there are like, his character is very funny. I mean, there is definitely a lot of good humor with his character, but he takes you on a ride. It is wonderful. And Diego Calva is the lead, and this dude is a nobody. I mean, I want to say he's nobody, but like I have never heard of him before. I don't know what he's been in. And he's phenomenal. Just phenomenal. Just electric on screen. Just an absolutely captivating main character. A great audience surrogate. Margot Robbie. I'm not a particularly big Margot Robbie fan, but I think this is hands down her best role. I think it is just an absolutely like tragic portrayal of, the Hollywood system and how somebody can be a big star for a flash in the pan instance, and then Hollywood will just completely spit you up and chew you back out. Gene Smart has a freaking wonderful role as a tabloid journalist who basically has like essentially the thesis statement of the film, where the film is all about kind of like the legacy that you leave behind. Toby, Toby, my boy Toby Dragon. Toby is a very bad boy in this movie. A very, very bad boy.
Will be.
And the ending, I don't want to say the ending's as good as La La Land, because that is the one thing that La La Land has on this movie. I genuinely think that La La Land might have my favorite film ending of all time. But the ending of this movie is almost just as good. And it is a phenomenal celebration of the blood, sweat, and tears that go into Hollywood. And this movie is super cynical as well. I mean, there is just a ton of debauchery. There's a ton of there's one particular scene, Dragon, that I think you would absolutely love. Like, I honestly think you should watch the movie for this scene alone, where it's like all of the characters' first day on a sound movie set, the whole quiet on set thing, and they're just trying to get a single take, and the sound is going so wrong. And oh my God, the tension in that scene is so freaking palatable. It is just delicious.
Palpable.
It is a delicious hot box of tension. Oh, I love this movie. I really do. It's to the point I'm almost kind of questioning, like, maybe should this be number one? The reason why my number one is where it is, I will get into, and I do think it's a far more accessible film than Babylon. But man, Damien Chazelle just swings for the fences so hard in this movie. And for a lot of people, he struck out. But for other people, genuinely, I feel like the consensus of this film is that, like, it's going to be one of those movies that people don't get right away. But I would be shocked, Dragon. I would be shocked if this movie isn't one of those movies that kind of like gains that sort of like cult following over time and does become beloved over time, because there is so much to love here. Damien Chazelle, probably hands down my current favorite filmmaker right now. Really. I think the man has made 3 of the best films of the American canon of the past 20 years, with Whiplash, La La Land, and this. First Man, I need to rewatch. I didn't particularly care for First Man, but those other 3 are just so top tier. All right, I think I'm about done, Dragon. I think I'm about done gushing. Woo! Okay, go ahead. What's your number 2?
Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
Okay.
Yeah, so of course, I'm a sucker for Del Toro's style. Of course, the prospect of him doing animation, which apparently, historically he wanted to do a lot more animation in his career, but back in the day, I believe back when he was in Mexico doing movies, I believe he someone broke in and basically trashed his studio, and I forget if he was working. I assume he was working exclusively in stop motion at that time. Hence this, and basically someone went in, they destroyed the puppets, and just they stole stuff. So it just never went to fruition. So this was always like in the back of his mind to do, but he could never have the means to do it. Of course, now, yeah, it's a really inspired and refreshing take on the Pinocchio story, especially in a year where it's just chock full of Pinocchio retellings that have not been great. Goes without saying, the stop motion animation on this is great. Of course, it's really fun setting this in the 40s, which of course it's kind of like little nods of the Disney films. So again, we're kind of remixing certain elements that really worked over the years with Pinocchio, but again, adding kind of in a way you've never seen it before, which I really appreciated. I love the themes. The themes that play in this movie I thought were really strong. I love the themes of essentially children, thinking themselves invulnerable or immortal, and we've kind of applied that to Pinocchio. These are like things you never really think of in the Pinocchio story. That, I mean, obviously, like the main version we're all thinking, we never really broach these things because, one, it's a bit of a downer in the story we're already. It's like we turned that poor kid into a donkey. But yeah, it's this is like a grounded. I just love this grounded, relatable arc on Pinocchio in a way that we've never seen it before, And while it's so grounded, at the same time, we have essentially like an angel of death sort of thing going on, which is kind of
Oh
interesting.
yeah, the that whole element of the movie is I forgot to mention that, but that is easily the strongest element for
Yeah,
me. Yeah.
that's what I'm saying to you. I love the themes at
I
play
oh
with
my
all of
god, the
that.
designs are
Mm-hmm.
just fucking fantastic.
And
Yeah.
the fact it's like a wood sprite, I think, is one of the
Uh-huh.
ideas from Blue Fairy, which makes a lot of sense. That's what I'm
The
saying,
rabbits
Tiki.
just give me such Watership Down vibes.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying, Tiki. And I think the simplest way of summing up this movie is Del Toro needs to do all the Disney remakes because look what he did here. Think about it, honestly, just all
No,
the
he doesn't. He
well, I'm
really
not
doesn't.
saying I'm
Don't
I'm
Dragon, don't cripple the man's career like that, Dragon. That's sentencing him to career prison.
well, I'm joking, but
Seriously.
it is funny
I
though.
know, I know.
There are at least two Disney movies that we have wanted him to remake for a long time. It's just it's you want him to do that Haunted Mansion movie, and I wanted to do Hunchback. So it's just kind of
Uh-huh,
funny.
uh-huh.
I was saying, like Del Toro, think about it. The remakes of Del Toro's, he essentially did a Creature of the Black Lagoon remake that was phenomenal, won an Oscar. He did this, which honestly might, I don't know if it's going to win the animation Oscar. It quite possibly might. I don't know. I think it will, but that's just it's a broad speculation. Anyway, point being, I love what Del Toro did with this movie. I love like it applied things to Pinocchio I never thought about doing, and I was marveling at it. I had a great time with it. I was very captivated by it, and it's very interesting. Well, I'll say the rest was when we talk about it again, but I really liked it.
Okay. All right. And finally, my number one, you can probably guess. I've been kind of talking about it the whole time. It's Pearl. It's Pearl. Oh, Dragon. I've literally just realized this, but we can actually do this now. All right. You ready?
Yeah. And
And
Pearl.
Pearl. All right. Beautiful.
And it's his number one.
Yes. So, honestly, I do genuinely think that I am probably going to go back and rewatch Babylon more than this movie. But I think the reason I have Pearl at number one, Dragon, this is where kind of like the favorite versus best is a little bit muddy for me because I'm honestly putting Pearl at number one is a little bit of a statement for the whole year because I do very much think that this movie kind of like exemplifies all the best qualities of 2022 cinema in one film. But yeah, like obviously it's horror, so I do want to celebrate the fact that 2022 might be like honestly maybe the single best year for the horror movie genre ever. There are people who cover horror movies for for their entire YouTube channel who are saying that. And also, I genuinely think that what Ty West did this year with X coming out in the start of the year, giving us that foundation, giving us kind of like where this character will end up, the tragic fate of the character, the fact that this character is never going to escape the farm, is going to be a decrepit, horrifying old woman. And then this movie literally starts out where Pearl is just so, head in the clouds, like one day I'm going to leave this place. And it's like, no, you're not. And that whole vibe is with you the whole movie. And I think what Ty West did with that is genuinely a stroke of genius and one of the most creative things I have ever seen done with franchise filmmaking. I mean, and that is another inherent thing why I decided to make this my number one. Is that like as far as like franchises go, I have never seen something like the X franchise where it's like we're getting a third one of these. We're getting a sequel to X set in the 80s, and I honestly think you could do another prequel with Pearl because there's a lot of stuff with her husband that's kind of left up in the air at the end of this movie. And so I should just say, Mia Goth, just an absolutely phenomenal performance. I think if anything else, Dragon, I think 2022 had some of the best performances that we have seen in a long time. Brendan Fraser is up there. But Mia Goth, I mean, she's never going to get nominated for an Oscar, but she should. Like, I genuinely think she probably has just as much of a case as oh god, Tony Collette did in Hereditary. I really do. I really think it's that strong of a performance. I mean, she just oh god, Dragon. Literally, it's one of those movies where when the credits roll, the movie sticks on her face, like just a close up of her face, the whole credits, and it is spellbinding. It's genuinely probably the most memorable moment in the whole movie. Um, I don't know. And this movie just has such a great kind of like it's essentially like a 1940s golden age of Hollywood movie, but twisted. And I love it. I love it so much. It's got like I love the title reveal where, it starts out with her in the barn and she's talking to all the farm animals. And then it goes dark really quick where she kills Mr. Goose. And then she feeds Mr. Goose to Mr. Gator. And the title reveal with just the giant pearl text as the gator pops up is just a wonderful title reveal. I'm a sucker for good title reveals now. I honestly am starting to get to a point where it's like a foundational part of the movie where, like Babylon, the title of that movie comes on basically like a half hour in after the party scene, and I love that too. I love it. Anyways, I'm sorry. So yeah, I think Pearl just absolutely represents like the best of franchise filmmaking, which this year was a really strong year for franchise films. And the best of horror and the best of indie cinema just all in one. I mean, it is a complete package. think I think it's going to be an absolute cult classic. I think it's a shame that it pretty much flopped at the box office. Although, it's not a flop in the same way that, something like, I hate to throw this under the bus, but something like Lightyear is a flop. I'm sorry, Dragon. I'm literally staring at it. It's the first thing that came to my head. Where, they didn't spend a ton of money on this, so it wasn't a huge investment. But this is going to be a cult classic. And it is just a hell of a character study. It's a hell of a horror movie. It's a hell of a performance. It's just super memorable. Like I said, I do think that Babylon might hit bigger highs for me on a personal level, but I have to give Pearl the number one spot just for me. It's absolutely like the perfect Venn diagram of everything that I loved about 2022 in film. All right.
Are there any comments before we continue?
Nope, not really. Not any recent ones. Just LEB wishing us a good night and also saying, oh, when I watched Megamind, which would have been the movie of my year if it didn't come out in 2010. Right, let's see. LEB also says Batman was probably my movie of the year since I only saw 3 movies. Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Number 1, Bullet Train.
Yeah, I know you're a Deadpool fan, so that's fair. I like it. If we did a top 30, it would probably be in the top 30, but I do think it's a little messy for my taste.
Look. Well, again, I was going by favorites on this. And again, the top 3 were very interchangeable.
Sure.
It's just this one's. I gotta be honest. Ever since this came out, it's stuck with me most throughout the year. I mean, David Leitch. It's him with, of course, the Deadpool 2 director David Leitch. Of course, made his bones in John Wick and everything. It's him with a very fun set piece with the bullet train. You have Brad Pitt as this ladybug character. Is the idea is like the smash and grab guy who's very like he's not an assassin or anything. He's just a really good kid. It's a very Jackie Chan defensive fighting style he's got. And just seeing this, it's just an insanely fun premise of just fighting all these this poor guy's fighting all these people on a train who all want this MacGuffin briefcase that he's got. I don't know, the movie's got style. It's got kind of like a 70s style to it. It's got action.
It's got style. It's got grace. But does this Kong have a funny face? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
All right.
I'm
Anyway,
so sorry.
point being, it's it's got a great ensemble. This movie, just to me, is fun to rewatch. But the first thought I had coming out of the theater on this is, I can't wait to rewatch this. This was delightful, and
um,
I got it on. They got it on Blu-ray once I could, once it came out. And then, of course, to my chagrin, very soon after that, it was on Netflix. So I didn't have
yep.
to, but still, I get the bonus features and everything. Regardless, I don't know. I think David Leitch knows how to make a good movie, and it was a good action movie. And again, it was pretty much honestly, it felt like a Deadpool comic. I think deep down, that's why I really liked it. Is it feels like a Deadpool story, and it was just I just found it hilarious, and I found it had some charismatic performances in it. And there's not really a whole lot of science to it there, Tiki. It was to me, it was I kept every time I kept making the list, I just kept circling back to what the heck am I going to put as the number one? And of course, it went to the obvious ones like, well, there's Batman, and of course, then Pinocchio came around. I was like, well, this is really good. And then of course, I kept circling back to, I got to put Bullet Train in the top five somewhere. I was like, well, I mean, it's not five, it's not four, and it's just process of elimination. I kept kind of Bullet Train. It's not perfect, but it's like with kind of our kind of our opening, kind of our what gets us on the train. But you know what? It's just it was a good it was the best time, one of the best times I had in 2022. So there you go.
Yeah, I really do respect that choice, and throw one more bit of shade at everything everywhere all at once the way out, just to make sure that YouTube film people hate me. But I feel like people are almost like kind of like obligated, like they almost feel like a kind of like a social pressure to put everything everywhere all at once, like a lot of the times, like honestly most of the time, at their number one. So I do really I like the fact, Dragon, that you and I both have like very almost, I don't want to call them niche because they're not, but they're very like kind of almost like out of left field picks that like I don't see anyone else putting Pearl even in their top 10, let alone as their number one. So I strive to be original for my top picks.
Yep.
All right. Well, guys, Colby, especially Paragon, just Jesus, we actually managed to make this 3 hours. So I genuinely really appreciate you guys sticking with this the whole time. I find that impressive. And yeah, it's been a great year. Yeah, like I said, Colby, I think we're all going to the World's Fair. It probably would have been in my top 10 if not for the whole, the like I said, Dragon, I kind of had the same issue you were having with that documentary where it's like, what? I don't even really know what year to classify this as because people have been seeing this movie for a couple of years now, but it just recently became widely available. But anyways, so just kind of a sneak peek. We've got a couple more year end type videos coming up. Tomorrow, Dragon and I will be talking movie memoirs. Where we'll be going over all the December stuff we saw, movies, TV, catch up, news, all that good stuff. I'm sure we'll probably recap some of the movies that we have on this. And also, Wednesday, don't miss the grand return of Goofy Yuck Yuck to the Disney debates, going up against Rohit Dar in a battle for the year-end questions. What is the best Disney movie of 2022? What was the worst Disney Plus episode of 2022 of Marvelous Star Wars show? And what Disney release of 2023 should we most be anticipating? That's all coming to you Wednesday over the next couple days of our 2022 wrap-up / 2023 jumpstart on the So You Want to Be an Imagineer YouTube channel. 10 years of podcasts. I just want to get that up front. I probably should have said that at the beginning since this is our first podcast of the new year, but thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. It's been an awesome ride. I think 2023, I don't know, Dragon, for some reason, there is something in my bones. I don't want to jinx us, but there's something in my bones. I can feel that 2023 is going to be a really good year for us. I can feel it. I'm trying to put that positive energy out there into the world. All right, so big thanks to Jacob Weil, Keeper Colby, LAB. I believe that's no, we had a couple.
Well, yeah, we had we let's see, I'm pretty sure we had Koski, but
Koski, yeah, Koski was there. You are absolutely right.
and
Koski was here.
we had an oddball there. We had
Equitad.
there we go, Equitad.
I
Yes.
really wish I knew how to pronounce that properly. They popped up before, but right.
Yep. Well, there you go.
Future's bright. I gotta wear shades. All right, thank you, Jacob. And with that, I will end the show. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good New Year.